Okay, so one of the first major things that happened when we moved in right before I turned 12, so it was probably 12 when this happened. I had seen like shadows and stuff up to this point. I kind of like thought I heard like the house when we first moved in had that old shag carpet that was like super polyester crap shag. So you could hear people walking on it. And I would think every now and again I could like hear somebody walking around on the shag carpet, but like nothing, there was nothing definitive. There was nothing super loud. So I'm going to sleep one night and like, I'm sure we've all had this experience, but if you have like sheets that are tucked in at the end of your bed and then you have a comforter on top of it, and you move your legs around, sometimes like the sheets and the blanket kind of settle on your legs, right? So like this, like they kind of settle down in between your legs and it can feel kind of weird. But I lay down to go to sleep. I turned off the light and I felt that. I'm going to kind of show you on the bed here. Hold on. I'm going to do the best I can. Okay. So I felt that happening by my feet, right? So like down here, but then it just like was like moving up. And when it got to like my hip, I was like, this is not normal. And I sat up. And when I tell you, there was a dark outline of a child with their hand on my bed, like looking up at me. I couldn't get any definition from the kid. It was literally like a black shadow, tiny, with their little mitt just sitting on the bed. So I turned on my like side light, and I remember like being almost like frozen in fear. I gotta catch my breath. This is so many years later. It still freaks me out. So I caught my breath, turned on the light, and it didn't go away. He didn't go away. So then I actually like stuck my hand in the shadow and waved it around like this to be like, goodbye. Like, I don't want you here. And it went away, and I did eventually get to sleep with all the lights on in my room. But that was the first time I saw that entity, and I would end up seeing him. I couldn't give you a number of how many times, even like a rough estimate of how many times a year I would see him. I would see him all the time. All right, so I keep on getting asked to do story time after story time of these ghost stories. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in a timeline. So kind of progression of the hauntings, and then what happened, how my parents reacted, how my family reacted, how other people started getting affected. So hopefully today I'll have at least one more story out for you guys. And I just appreciate all the support. All the comments of people saying they believe me is really awesome. We didn't share any of this information for a really long time. My family didn't, because you don't want to come across as a nut. I've seen some negative comments like, well, ghosts aren't real, so it's not a big deal. And totally your prerogative. I'm not going to try to convince you that they are. I think that's the same as trying to convince somebody that God is real when they don't believe in God. I would be a full-blown atheist, like non-believer, if I hadn't lived in this house. I will just throw that out there. Like, this house, like something's going on that we don't understand. I don't necessarily think that there's like a one deity or whatever, and I don't give a shit if you do or don't. But I will say that, coming into these comments just to be a troll is kind of a pathetic way to live your existence. That's all. I'll give stories later. Great question. Thank you for asking. It was me. It was me for the first several years that we lived there. And then my mom was the second person that had something happen, which is a story for another day, that will also absolutely ruin lives with how creepy it is. I still sometimes think about it and it makes me a little queasy. But yeah, it was me. So a couple things I wanted to get out of the way real quick. I wanted to show, this is the Colorado map, showing where the native tribes' territory was. Where they lived, where they existed within the state of Colorado before the Europeans came in and brutally removed them from the land. Just to kind of show, like, how they were coming in contact with each other and kind of, what was going on around there. Also, I wanted to show you, so this house was between these two red dots right here. So South Denver metro area. We moved down there from the North Denver metro area when I was about 11. I was almost 12. It was the end of my 5th grade year. I also wanted to let you know it was the end of my 5th grade year to like reinstate that this crap started when I was but a child. I was so young. I feel like, 11, 12, like that's young. And I didn't know how to really, 1, process a lot of it, and 2, like deal, and 3, explain it to my parents in a mature enough way for them to like really take me seriously. So that's kind of a bummer. But the stuff started pretty much after we first moved in. Like I even remember the first night I slept down there. The first night we were there, we all slept on air mattresses in the front room. And then the movers came the next day, put everything together, and I slept downstairs like the very next night. And the vibe was so different from sleeping with all of my family in the front room to being downstairs. Also, side note nation, I don't think I would ever put my 11-year-old child 2 stories below me in a house with a walkout basement, but my parents are of a different generation, so that's fine. Right away when I moved down there. So things that kind of led up to my last story of the boy by the side of the child by the side of the bed, I would constantly hear walking around down there. And it sounded like, even if I had all the doors closed and locked, that I could hear them like walking down the hallway. And I should also state real quick, so my room down there was shaped like a U basically. So there were entrances to the room on both like tips of the U. And one side, that was the side that faced outside, there was like a hallway. It was kind of a long hallway between the door to like where you were in my room. And then on the other side was the bathroom that was the same length as the hallway. And then, so the bathroom had 2 doors, 2 entries, one from my bedroom, one from the exterior hallway to get in. The exterior bathroom door locked and the hallway bedroom door locked, but the door between my bedroom and the bathroom did not. Sorry, I had to catch my breath. So also, I should state that this house was built in the 70s, and there was the most god-awful disco wallpaper in the bathroom. It was like mirrored, which made for seeing shadows, particularly in the bathroom, really upsetting, because not only would the light shift, and it would always kind of look like somebody's like walking in front of a light, basically. I had a nightlight in there all the time. I could see the reflection of the shadow in the mirrored wallpaper if I was standing in the right place or even laying down in bed. I didn't often sleep with the door open between the bathroom and the bedroom, because as many doors between me and whatever the hell was going on outside of that bedroom, the better. But even before things got really crazy and aggressive, I would hear like just a little ding, 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 ding. Like, let me see if I can make the sound real quick. I'd hear like, I don't know if you can hear that, but like just doorknobs kind of getting messed with, and like the walking happening, and it wouldn't sound like a door would open, but suddenly I'd hear someone walking in my room and like stopping certain places and then starting to move again. And like I had said in a previous video, this was like really cheap polyester shag carpet, so you could hear the carpet like moving. A lot of times when I would take showers, so the bathroom also, on top of the god-awful wallpaper, had can lights in the ceiling. And one was just outside of the little stall shower. The light would shift while I was in the shower, like someone had walked under the can light. And several times, like during my shower, I'd actually open the door and be like, hello, like, because I'd have my boombox on. Thank you. I'd have Nirvana playing so loud. And I'd just be taking a shower. I'd be doing normal, like, tween teen stuff. So I always thought, like, well, maybe my dad came down and unlocked the door and, like, came in, or my mom came down to, like, tell me to hurry up to get ready for school, whatever. I did tell my parents almost right away that I was concerned about like what was like I just was kind of like, I feel like somebody's down there with me, I think I had tried to say. I know I had like gotten in trouble the first time my parents realized I locked both of the bedroom doors.
I think they came to get me on like a Saturday morning or something, and they were displeased. And I remember saying to them, like, well, I lock them because I feel like something's down here with me, and I feel safer if they're locked. And I got you can't do that. You know, we don't have any locked doors in this house. You know, blah, 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 blah. These are our rules. And in my head, I was just like, oh, I don't give a crap if they're your rules. Like, I'm locking the damn doors. And I think a lot of, you know, the subtle stuff starting up almost right away. I think it was about 6 months until I saw the child next to the bed. I ended up really kind of getting a knack for making the space as comfortable as possible and actually getting some sleep, disassociating a little bit while I was in there. So like I would turn on every light I could get my hands on when stuff got too weird. And a lot of times I would turn on my stereo, not very loud, but like loud enough to kind of drown out the sound of someone walking all around my bed while I'm trying to sleep, you know. So I just, like, even after I saw the kid, I just turned on all the lights and I went to sleep. And I told my parents about it the next day, and they told me that I had had a nightmare. It was like, no, I literally just laid down. That's not what happened. So yeah, thanks for sticking around. More creepy stories to come. I'll try to post more than just one story tomorrow. And I'm also working on not blueprints, but like I'm going to make up little maps of each floor of the house because some stories are coming where that's going to be important information. Okay, I think this is my last video / story for the night. I spent a lot of time last night answering questions and stuff, and I just got myself freaked out and I barely slept. So I am going to tell you about my 12th birthday party. My last story, just kind of how things were slowly starting to ramp up, had me remember my 12th birthday party and some of the things that I found out after the fact. So since we just moved down there, all of my friends that came for my 12th birthday party sleepover were all from the north side of town. We had an overall pretty uneventful night until we all started trying to go to bed. I definitely had one friend who was sleeping. We were all sleeping in the playroom and she was sleeping in the basement. We were in the basement and she was sleeping closest to like the doors to my bedroom. And she kept on saying, "Do you guys hear that? Do you guys hear that?" And come to find out later on, that she heard walking like next to her the whole time. She heard somebody next to her walking around on the floor. And I had situated myself closest to the cabinets and like the end wall in the playroom so that like nothing could be in the hallway and get me. Like I sacrificed my friends and put them all like closer to the bedroom doors in like the active area, which I'm a jerk. But I remember her saying that. Another one of my friends, very good friends who I'm still friends with today, she actually woke up in the middle of the night at that party. She told me years and years and years after the fact. And she woke up and felt like she was being watched. And she rolled over so that she was facing the hallway that went into my bedroom. So the door with the little hallway. And the door was open. The room was dark. And there was a little child, a little boy, standing, staring at her in the doorway. And she said they stared at each other for a second, and she just decided to roll back over and try to go back to sleep. Which, like, again, I just feel like when you're so young, she wasn't even 11. She was 10 at this party. She would turn 11 a month later. So I just feel like when you're that young and you're seeing stuff like this, like, you just kind of disassociate from it. I mean, I think even as an adult, God, now I'm shaking even thinking about it. Like, I think you even do as an adult, but she rolled over and tried to go back to sleep and did eventually fall asleep. But so she technically saw the child / boy before I even did. And she was hard pressed to spend the night at my house any other time since then. She would only come down and spend the night basically for birthday parties after that. And I don't blame her. Ask and you shall receive. It's just a nondescript 1970s house. And I'll show you the back. This is the back of the house. This is the walkout basement.
You can kind of see main floor and then up here, the third floor. And then we had all this space behind us, which is actually the thing that my dad loved most about the house. And I think one of the things he absolutely didn't want to leave. The creek I mentioned ran right here. This is a really steep hill down to the creek side. That's it. Nothing special about it. I should also mention, I feel like I'm not mentioning my mom a lot. She's been dead for several years, so I feel like she's kind of like not left my vocabulary, but my dad's just a much more prominent parent in my life right now. But she also loved this. You can't tell by the picture, but you can see the whole Rocky Mountain Front Range over this hill. So it's such a cool place to like watch thunderstorms like crest over the foothills and watch sunsets. This was what made the house for sure. Hi, Pilar. Yes, I did. This is part 5 of the ghost story, and this is going to be 3 stories wrapped into one. The first one is going to be seeing the figure on the stairs for the first time. And this is actually in a mirror. So I did you guys a favor, and I started at least a floor plan of the basement when we first moved in. Okay, so here it is. This is what I was saying, like my room was kind of like a U. So there was like the bathroom, the closet, this little hallway, and I slept in this area over here. I guess I do this. I slept in this area over here. These were the stairs. So in my first story, when I said I tried to like, run out of the bathroom and run up, that's what was going on. And then the playroom. So my first story was the first time actually seeing the entity that crawled towards me on the stairs. I'm pretty sure this was the same thing. I was getting ready in the bathroom. So I was standing with the mirror, with the sink here. It was on a diagonal, and there were actually like, the mirrors were like angled, almost like a 3 mirror system. So one right behind the sink, and then 2 angled on either side. So there was kind of a straight line back to this door here. And I am going to show you kind of the area of what I saw. Okay, so imagine you're getting ready. You're looking in the mirror. I'm looking in the mirror right now. And I see a flippin' dark head peering out just here. Now, there was a wall right on the other side, and the ceilings were like at door level height. They had dropped ceilings in that basement because the 70s were awful to everybody. So I saw this like dark shadowed head just sticking out, like while I'm 12 years old, getting ready for school. So this was not nighttime. I was not sleeping. It was probably 6:30 to 7 o'clock in the morning. And I saw just this little bloop, stopped what I was doing, turned around to look, and it skittered back this way, which would have been directly into a wall. I quickly decided that my hair could be brushed and my mascara could be put on upstairs in the kitchen where other people were up and about. So yeah, that was the first time. I'm pretty sure that was the same entity, and that was the first time I actually saw them. The second story I have for you is just a very weird phenomenon that happened. So there was one night, the whole night, I really felt like I was being watched. Like it was very difficult to fall asleep. If I woke up to go to the bathroom, or if I woke up to like roll over or get resituated, I just felt like I was being watched, like big time. And the next morning, it was the winter time at this point, and there was snow on the ground. My dad was outside shoveling, and he saw something. I'm going to pull up the blueprint. Okay, so you can see here, there's like the sliding glass door to go outside, and then I had a window. Oh my gosh, why does it do this? I had a window right here in my room, and there was just like rocks and gravel outside of it, but it had snowed several inches that night. So my dad came outside, and there were large animal tracks coming up to this window and pacing in front of the window, just pacing. So we had a friend who worked for the Rocky Mountain National Parks. He was, he worked for like the animal control observation and hunting part of the Rocky Mountain National Parks. So we had him come down to look at the tracks, and he was pretty sure they were bobcat tracks. So a bobcat had come to my window and had just paced in front of it, who knows for how long, in the snow, just paced in front of that window. So not really paranormal, but like I still think about that freaky nonetheless, that I was down there like, I am getting observed by something. like something's watching me. It was actually probably a bobcat. My last story is my brother's first birthday in the house, and what happened then. So he also had a sleepover. All the kids slept in this playroom down here. I actually slept in his room upstairs, and that was an uneventful night for me. However, our cousin was part of his sleepover for his birthday, and at about 11 o'clock at night, my cousin just lost his ever-loving mind. Screaming, inconsolable, sobbing. Now, I'm the oldest, so I think this birthday was probably his 9th or 10th birthday. Probably his 9th. So these were like 8 and 9-year-olds at this sleepover. So my cousin was probably 8 or 9 at the time. My cousin he's losing it and cannot get words out to my parents. Like, had run up from the basement screaming. So like, we're all up in the kitchen trying to figure out what's going on. And he's insisting, like, we call his mom, we get his mom over there immediately. He will not sleep there. He cannot go back downstairs. He doesn't even want to go get his stuff. He can't, like, and he is like shaking, hyperventilating, barely able to speak, sobbing uncontrollably. My aunt does eventually come. We were able to get a hold of her, and she came, picked him up, and took him back. He would not go back downstairs, so my brother and my dad went down there and gathered up his stuff and brought them upstairs for her while she was on her way over, and my mom and I tried to comfort my cousin. They left. Slumber party resumed. We found out many years later my mom and that cousin ended up getting pretty close, and they talked quite a bit. And somehow the conversation came up. Now, at this point, my cousin was an adult, but the conversation came up about that party and how he just was so beside himself. And my mom said he got really quiet, and he looked at her and said, "Oh yeah, I remember that night. I've never forgotten that night." My mom was like, what happened? You seemed fine, and then you just lost it. Everybody was going to sleep." And he said, "I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but I got such a gross feeling of like despair and panic in the pit of my stomach that I knew I couldn't be in that house another second if I could help it." And he said, and it just became so overwhelming. And I knew the one thing I could do to get out of there is just lose my mind. And like, he's like, I was scared and I was definitely panicking, but I knew crying and asking for my mom would get me out of there, which, one, kudos to my aunt for being such a boss bitch, and my cousin knowing at such a young age that he was safe to ask for his mom to come and she would do it and he wouldn't be in trouble. I think that's amazing. But also, like, so many people said this a lot, like when they were over, they just got this feeling of like, almost like terror, like just, they could not stand being there. I had several friends that would come down these stairs and they'd get to the base right here. I had one friend who stopped on the last stair and was like, "I'm not taking another step." And it was daytime. It was like 2 PM. And he was like, "I'm going upstairs. I absolutely will not be down here." So those are the 3 quick stories wrapped into one. I do want to say, if you made it this far, thank you. A couple things coming up. I am eventually going to do a live with Q&As, but I'd rather tell a couple more stories before I do that so that I don't spoil any stories, but I know there's a lot of questions. I also know, like, my first story, there was kind of some discrepancies about how was I sleeping. My dad woke up. It was a long time ago, and to me, like, it's all happening up here in my head, and so sometimes I forget to, like, mention all the moving parts, but I want to do a live Q&A so we can talk about that. My dad also agreed to let me kind of have an interview with him to ask him some questions that you guys have asked about, like, why did they stay so long? Why didn't they sell the house? When did he start to believe? And I'm also going to ask him to talk about some of his experiences. So I will also be adding those to the playlist, hopefully this weekend. And I know everybody really wants to hear about my mom's experience, and I will get there. You're going to have to be patient because I'm doing this in a linear fashion, like timeline-wise. So we're going to talk about a couple more things that happened, and then I will have a sole video just for what happened to my mom.
Okay, one quick spooky story before I go to bed. This one's kind of a doozy. I'm going to tell you about the first time I actually saw that child apparition that was next to my bed in his full form. So I pulled up this again so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. My bed was basically right here. I had another bed right here and then a desk here against the wall and like a dresser and a chair over here. So basically I was getting ready to go to sleep one night. This started within 30 minutes of me turning out the lights to go to sleep. I have never been a person who goes immediately to sleep. It takes me at least an hour usually after I turn off the lights, has my entire life to actually fall asleep. But I had pretty much just started to go down. And I had, because I was a child and a moron, I had this door to the bathroom open. So this door and this door up here were locked, and I had a nightlight in the bathroom, but I had the bathroom door to my bedroom open. And I started hearing the jingling. This, I'm gonna like be heavy breathing through all of this, so I apologize. I heard the doorknob jingling in the bathroom. I was sleeping. When I started hearing it, I was actually facing the window down here. So I rolled over in bed and had a pretty decent shot into like part of the bathroom with the open door. And what I saw were shadows like that looked like they were going in front of the nightlight that was kind of plugged in back here above the toilet. It just looked like something was walking, like pacing in the bathroom. And I got like a super, super, super uneasy feeling, like just like, this is not good. Like this is not, whatever is happening is not good. So they kind of got crazier and crazier, and then the light turned on. The light turned on in the bathroom, the full-on light, which made me throw back the covers and hop out of bed to close this door, and it shut in my face as I was getting out of bed. I didn't even like make it to the door, and it shut in my face. To which then I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I want to get upstairs where everybody else is. So I ran down this way to get to this door down here. And as I started coming this way, this little hallway was dark. I saw a figure just like right here in the corner. And it was that child spirit. So he's very tiny. I would say probably around 4 or 5 years old. Some people who have seen him in my life have actually described him as a girl, which I could see that also being the case. He has very, like, not as long as mine, but like shoulder length blonde hair, and is in like kind of a sailor's uniform, like not uniform, but like a costume, you know, like a sailor's costume. And he's holding something. It was hard to make out for a long time what he was holding. And he looked very sick. He had like really dark circles under his eyes, and not like a spooky, I want to like convey that this wasn't like a spooky Hollywood dark circled, like sunken eyed child. This looked, if you've ever seen an actual kid who's really sick, like who has pneumonia or has the flu, that's what he looked like. He just looked like a very sick kid. And when I saw him, I obviously like stopped. I'm sure my heart rate was through the roof, but I don't remember being scared seeing him, which was the one thing. Like the BS with the bathroom, terrifying. Terrifying. But seeing him was not scary. It was like, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't even know how to describe it, but it wasn't scary. It also wasn't peaceful. It was definitely unsettling, but it wasn't like a like jump scare. So I kind of backed up to the light switch, turned all the lights on in my room, and as I turned them on, he went away. I wasn't down there. I did not stick around. I was down there for maybe a minute or two more, and then I grabbed my pillows off my bed and I booked it upstairs, leaving all the lights on, and I spent the night in my parents' room. That was the first night I actually saw him as a full-bodied apparition.
I just realized after watching it back, I should add that I don't think the child was what was going in front of the light and shutting the door and turning the light on in the bathroom. I, to this day, feel like because of other things that happened in the house, that he was preventing me from going out to the main area where whatever negative entity was doing that was at. I totally feel like he was preventing me from going out there while it was not the best time to do it. Yeah. So I just wanted to end with that. He was one of the benevolent spirits. We had a couple benevolent spirits in the house, and he was definitely one of them. And he did things like this for myself and for other people and for my mom often. Yeah. So that's the story. Oh, also I want to finish up by saying I did talk to my dad today. We had a really good conversation about his experiences in the house. And once I have that video edited, I will upload it.
Okay, everybody, this is my dad. He agreed to talk to us a little bit about some questions that people keep asking. So hopefully this will answer some of those for everybody, and you can have another perspective of the hauntings in the house I grew up in. Hi, Dad. Thanks for doing this.
Hello.
Okay, so what made you and Mom decide to purchase the house?
Oh, it was the backyard because it all faced onto a green belt. It was a pie-shaped lot, so it was very private. And that's really what it was. I went into the house, walked straight out the back to the back deck, big, huge covered deck, looked out on a green belt, and it's like, this is it. We're buying the house. I don't care what the upstairs or the downstairs looks like. So that kind of is what got it going and got us buying it. So of course it was closer to work. That was the original goal to move in the first place, was to get something closer to my office.
Okay. Did the previous owners or the realtor or anything say anything to you guys about the house being haunted?
No.
And I'm trying to think, like, we moved in around like 1993, so the previous owners would have been in there from like 79 to 93.
No, because they weren't the house was built in 79. There was another owner that had it, that he sold it to them, and I'm not sure when they bought it.
Oh, okay.
So there was two owners prior to us. So.
Okay, that's interesting. So basically 2 owners in like 13 years.
Yeah.
3 owners in 13 years. When I started saying the house was haunted or that I was experiencing things, did you and Mom ever have any discussions about it? And if you did you guys believe me, or did you think something else was going on?
I didn't. I was kind of a non-believer because I'm an engineer and I'm of logic and things have to be proven. And I thought it was odd that you were saying you were having these issues. So was your little brother, by the way, too. He was less verbal about it, but his actions indicated that something was going on. And I think it took a little bit, and then your mother, things started happening to her that started changing her mind. And then, so for me, it was a slow build up through the years, not only of you and Edward, but then friends and others, that independent people that came into the house or around the house, and they noted stuff. So it was kind of like, well, something must be going on. So that was kind of how it got started with my process of believing what's happening here.
So I guess, since you were saying, since Mom started getting affected and you started coming around, then Mom was probably the one who, out of the two of you, believed me first. Like, I know she sat me down after one specific occasion and said, "I'm so sorry, I believe everything you've said."
Right. I think that's true. Yeah, that's accurate.
So was there tell me about the first time that you actually had something happen to you.
Well, I think that looking back in time, I think the first time it happened, we were in the house fairly, pretty much a short period of time. And we heard a window shattered in the back of the house on the main level. And I mean, it was clear as bed. It shot me out of bed. And it was like somebody was breaking in, had broken the sliding glass door or the back of the kitchen window. and I went running down there expecting to see somebody, and of course there was no shattered anything. There was no windows were broken. No, nothing fell on the floor and had broken. So it was, and I just found that odd. It's like, well, I must have dreamed it or something. It's like, but it sounded so real. It just literally shot me out of bed. So it was like, well, what the heck was that? And I didn't have any clue then. So it just, so
I
I went
never,
back to bed.
that's the first time I've
Yeah.
heard that story. I think that's crazy.
Yeah. So but it was many years later. Then I said, oh, I think I know what that was now.
Them being doing what they do.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I get the most is why in the hell you and mom stayed there for almost 30 years in a house that was not only haunted, but was so active that there's like so many stories and so many people affected.
Well, I think one of the things that people have, have a perception of a haunting or haunted place is that it's happening every day,
Yeah.
and that if you show up there, you will certainly see something. Something will happen to you. That wasn't the case. I mean, over 27 years, which is 9,500 days, you actually count up all the incidences. You probably could do the same for you or for others. In 100 days, even 1,000 days. I mean, it's a small percentage, so it's not happening all the time. There might be months that go by, quite a big gap in between these things. So we love the house, we love the location, so we never saw a reason to leave just because of that. In fact, it was kind of like later after we had been there many years, 20 some years, we had an incident that happened where a lot of noise was going on in the entryway, and we just rolled over. So that's just the ghost. We just went back to bed. They weren't throwing knives at us. They weren't, like they do in some of these ghost movies. They weren't chopping us up or pulling us into walls into another portal or anything like that. So it just didn't seem like it was that egregious that we had to move. I know it was upsetting to your mother at times, but we worked around it, I guess. And of course, having the medium come and actually get rid of the more aggressive spirits seemed to make a difference.
It
Seemed to
made
make
a
a
huge
big
difference.
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Because I think the other spirits were very benevolent.
Yeah.
That's kind of what bothered your mother, because she came down with cancer, and then the one lady was always trying to tuck her in or brushing her hair back or doing stuff like that, which scared the heebie-jeebies out of your mother when it
Yeah.
happened. But she kind of understood too that they're not doing it out of malice.
Yeah.
It's really out of love. So that was part of the reason. Is just we didn't see that. The few incidents, or not few, but the number of incidents we had, we didn't feel it was egregious enough that we would move. Now, had that medium not come and we had gotten rid of the more aggressive spirit that really bothered your little brother, that might have precipitated us to move.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. So I've only shared a couple stories so far on the page. I'm like trying to do like a linear timeline of stuff because I just feel like that's a little bit easier than jumping around, and it's like keeping stuff a little bit more straight in my head as far as kind of the progression of you and mom getting affected and Ed getting more affected. And one of the stories I shared was that time that I thought there were people downstairs with me when I was still sleeping downstairs. And they were like tearing apart the playroom and like trying to get into my room. And I turned on all the lights and turned on all the stereos.
Yeah.
And that you eventually woke up feeling like something was wrong. And I was wondering if you could tell your perspective of that whole incident from your point of view, if you remember it at all.
I don't really remember that much, so I don't know if I could add a lot to that. I know that you were quite upset, and I came downstairs, but I was more bothered about you being down in that basement, because I had a friend or acquaintance that I knew where their daughter was attacked in the basement room from an actual person. So that's what bothered me. I was worried, I got worried about that too. So but I, at that point in time, I don't think I was quite a believer yet. I was quite a believer yet. What got me was when your cat, and then later your dog, was at the house, and I'm down in that, which then became the study because we moved you out of that basement, is their reaction to what was behind me, which was towards the rec room where the toys were at, and the way the cat would stare and the hair got up on it, started just going nuts, and the dog doing the same thing. It's like they're seeing something. I can't see it. I don't know what it is. They're seeing something.
Yeah.
And it's not a physical thing. It's not a person that's back there. So what the heck is it? So, but yeah, that particular instance with you, I can't really comment on it too much.
Yeah, I think from my memory, it was that I had turned on my boombox pretty loud and turned on the lights, and you came downstairs, and I think it was after your coworker or friend, their kid, had been attacked, and you realized you couldn't hear the music I had playing.
Right.
I just remember that being part of the conversation. Like, I can't hear you down here.
Yeah, so that's bad. It's like,
yeah, you're coming
somebody
up.
breaks in down there, I won't know.
Yeah. Interesting. I think one of the things that I think is interesting that I feel like a lot of people don't understand is that, yeah, you're not haunted all the time, but especially like with sleeping, like you were mentioning with you and Mom, you hear stuff and then you just kind of roll over and try to go back to sleep or just kind of like, even during the daytime, if you hear it, you're like, whoop,
yeah.
Oh guys, hey, like, give me some space. I just think it's interesting. Like, a lot of people, I feel like, have trouble processing that it's not really, I don't know if it's dissociating, but just that, like, you get so used to it that it's not this, like, life-altering, world-stopping thing.
Yeah. Well, this kind of goes against your timeline, but I'd like to lay the background for this. A lot of with my beliefs that's slowly solidified, it wasn't so much how the family was reacting and the experiences that they had. It was others who came into the house. And independently, without my ever saying to them that this is a haunted house, they would make comments. And I think John's friend, John, who came over there one time, but just literally freaked out. And when he spent the night down in the basement, and he basically came back to the house and told my wife that he would never, ever sleep in that house again. It was horrifying. He was chased out of the house, mentally anyway, chased out of the house and down through the drainage ditch. And there was something horrible following him, and he was done. That was it. He wasn't going to do it. And then any contract whenever we did work on the house is when things got the most active. And contractors that would show up and make comments about things. I mean, one was the one example of the noises and stuff. This was years later. We had the entryway, which was a tall 20-foot ceiling with a staircase going up it, and we had it repainted by the specialist who does the specialty painting. And he came in the house and was working on it. Of course, we're off at work, and he felt there was somebody behind him, and he was so freaked out, he just dropped his brush, ran out the front door, jumped in his truck, and took off. And he said, I wasn't going to come back. And then he realized I left my brush, the paints out, all that stuff. He says, I can't leave it like that. So then he came back and cleaned up. And then I came home and saw him. He says, you didn't tell me this house was haunted. It's like, no, I didn't. But I didn't. Some people don't. Like my brother and sister-in-law never experienced anything sleeping in our house. They never, nothing ever happened to them. But this guy was just quite upset about it. Well, he went ahead and finished, but he said he saw the apparition going across the walkway up above from one room to the other, which also got him running out of the house. Our contractor who finished the basement, he had a Native American who was coming to do the drywall in the basement, and it's a walkout basement. So he walks down the back, comes around to the back, and then he just stops and tells our general contractor, he says, I'm not doing this work. I won't come in this house. It's bad spirits here. I won't do it. And he left. And Dave's like, what the heck? and our main contractor he kind of knew things because things would kept his tools got moved, things disappeared, this stuff, all kinds of strange things happened to him while he was working on the basement. And he was one that came to me too. He says, "You didn't tell me this house was haunted." It's like, yeah, well, some people are affected, some aren't. And so, but he was able to just, he just went on with it anyway. So there were some weird things that happened, but I'm gonna, keep on going and finish the work.
Yeah.
So, but then other contractors he had, they didn't say anything. So it's just, I think it depends on how sensitive you are, what your sixth sense is to pick those things up. And I think some people just they don't have that. They don't sense anything or feel anything. So we'll let you into the spirit world, I'm saying.
Yeah. I think it's interesting also, like, speaking of that general, I know which general contractor you're talking about, but he did so much work on the house between like the back deck and the bathrooms and
the kitchen, yeah.
The kitchen and stuff, like, and he was affected every time. It's kind of interesting that he continued coming back even though.
Yeah, and that's a good explanation as to why didn't we move? Well, he kept coming back and working there, and he accepted it. He figured, well, if you guys are living here, it's not going to be that bad. So he persevered on, even though he had strange things happen to him. And he had this little Duplo whatever figure he found in the basement, buried in a wall. And so he would
buried in a wall. I'm just going to repeat that. Was buried in a wall. It was not ours.
Yeah, right.
In a wall.
Yeah, he didn't belong to kids.
Yeah.
And he would put that in different places when he left work, when he left the house, and he'd come back the next morning and it was moved. And so he kind of was blaming me that, why do you keep messing with me, moving the stuff around? And it's like, but the staircase from the house inside the house down to the basement wasn't in there. He had to rip that out. So there was no, you would have to drop down into the basement or go around and come in the back door, the back slider.
Yeah.
And which I wasn't. I said, I'm not going down there doing anything. But he said that was almost that was the one thing that was consistent for him. He would put, and he had a marble he'd put on his ladder that that could roll from side to side. But he'd have it all centered up and nice, so it wouldn't move. And of course, we didn't have any earthquakes or anything. But that marble was always moved, and sometimes it was down several different rungs too. So he found it quite strange. He actually was kind of entertaining for him. So.
Blah, blah, blah. I was going to ask you another question. I think I know the answer, but have you had any contact with the people who bought the house in 2020?
I did, but and this is probably why I wasn't informed. Under a Colorado real estate law, you are not obligated under any terms to disclose poltergeist, hauntings, any of those kind of things, paranormal stuff. You're not obligated at all to report any of that. So, we didn't get anything from them, and I didn't say anything to them either. So, and I did meet them after they purchased the house. Just before they moved in, they wanted me to come and talk to them and ask me questions about the house, which they did, and it was all just about the finishing in the basement and the things we did, and the electrical panel put in, stuff like that. So, but I did. But like I said, some people, my brother and sister-in-law, friends that would come stay with us. Your mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, your grandmother, that they would nothing. They experienced nothing. So friends that would come stay with us, your mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, your grandmother, that they would nothing. They experienced nothing. So I could see where a family can move in, and they would never experience anything because they're not sensitive to those kinds of things.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I think most people, if they were sensitive to it, they'd know it right away.
Yeah. That's kind of like John. Like, of the five of us, John really...
You really didn't have anything.
Wasn't affected ever.
Yeah. So, and the other thing was, too, I think after your mother passed away in that house, I was kind of, because I had nothing happen to me after that. And that was additional a couple of additional 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
I kind of felt that she might have just got them to pass on. It's like time for you to move on.
Rallied the troops, like, follow me.
So I, they may have, and they even today, if you contact them, they may have experienced nothing. So.
And do you think, I mean, I know what the medium said, and I know, how we all feel as a family, but do you personally think that it was the house, or that it was the land, or it was a mixture of both?
No, I think it was land. And she was pretty adamant about that when she came. She said it wasn't the house, because all this goes back before the houses were even in there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, she even described how the land was, with the Native Americans encamped on one side and settlers on the other. So that goes back far enough. There was, that was way outside of Denver, so it's probably, a stagecoach or migratory route from the south of Denver into Denver. So, or in the Littleton, it wasn't that far, from Littleton, but it's probably a good horse ride from our house to get to the downtown Littleton that was there. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of remember her talking about how there was like a roadway to the original Rothawood farm, or Highlands Ranch, basically the original.
Right. Well,
Highlands
it probably
Ranch.
was. Yeah, it probably was, because that was almost straight south of where we were at. So, and then I think the other thing was too, is I started after the medium mentioned that, I started asking neighbors subtly, without being too obvious, has anything strange happened? Well, our neighbor next door, the folks that lived there, he said, yeah, they had some things, but he said when all the kids were there, he said the house was so loud he never noticed anything. But he said when after they all had grown up, moved out of the house, and then they bought a new place, and the wife went there, and he was at that house by himself getting it ready to sell it. He was saying he started getting some strange things were happening. He's like, what the? And he's an engineer too. And he's like me. He's like, well, there's an explanation for this, but he could never find one. He's like, I don't know what's happening here. And then we had other people we knew within that overall neighborhood that said, oh yeah, we've had stuff. We had different people. That's like, when you mentioned it, then they start going on about the stuff that they've experienced. So yeah, I think it was the area. I don't think it had anything to do with the house.
It's interesting because through this getting so popular, I've actually had a couple people DM me that are from like that square block. If you look at the 4 main streets, I'm not going to say them, but they're from there. And one of them said, she was like, well, nothing crazy ever happened, but like the basement was so uncomfortable. Like everyone was kind of freaked out about the basement. And she said she and her family had the feeling of being like watched a lot, like they weren't alone. And I had another person DM me that said basically the same thing, that like it was just a creepy vibe in there. So I think that's probably the land.
Yeah. And I think that, because when you think about it, like our house, our basement was probably closer to the actual original level of the ground that was there.
Yeah.
That the upper floors that was all fill that was put in. So.
And you think, I want to circle back a little bit, just because it is a question I've actually gotten a couple of times, and it's a question that I've never in my life even considered. Mm-hmm. But do you think the level of activity, I know you had mentioned earlier, like you noticed changes in Ed, and he may have been too young to really verbalize what he was experiencing, but you noticed like changes in him.
Yeah.
Do you think that Ed and I kind of experiencing these things when we did affected like our performance in school, or any other, like our I guess our behavior in the house as well?
Well, I think it did with that for sure. I mean, I remember, because he'd go up there. That's what I always was wondering, what is he doing? Because he would close his door and stuff clothes or towels around the bottom part of the door and around the door to try to keep something out.
Yeah.
And then Ed was, at that time, I remember my password on my computer at that time was Blue Ed, I think. Because he got very melancholy and kind of sad. And of course, you think of Ed today, it's not even, doesn't make any sense.
It's not.
And it didn't make any sense when he got into high school either. I mean, it just, but when he was younger, I think it did affect his mood and his attitude. And it probably did you as well, so.
Yeah,
But
I
like
think
I said, John, eh,
John just John was just vibing in
yeah,
his own lane,
didn't affect him at all.
not getting bothered at all. I always think that I do have to say though, I think I told you and Mom, like when I moved back in 2016 and was sleeping in his old bedroom,
Yeah,
it was the least bothered I'd ever been in that house.
yeah, yeah.
Like
That
Ed's
right
room,
there.
forget it. The basement and what ended up being my room, which eventually became the study once you redid the
Right,
basement.
right.
Um, the quality and type of sleep and activity I had in those rooms versus John's room was like night
Mhm.
and day.
Yeah, yeah,
Like nobody was ever in John's room. I'd hear stuff in the hallway, but like never in the room.
yeah.
So it might also be, maybe John's just not really open to it. And then on top of it, he just happened to be in a room that they didn't
Well, and
mess
I
with.
think what Ed was impacted by was the really nasty spirit that the exorcist got out of there. I
Yeah.
think that that changed a lot for him once she did that. She was talking about the spirits because she was obviously very adept at seeing the auras of people and understanding that, and she could sense the spirits that were in the house, and which she said were many. She only pointed out a few of them that we kind of knew, the older lady and the little child. But she said there's a very angry man here that says, I remember your mother was always, she's like, do you feel like somebody's chasing you up the stairs when you come out of the basement from doing the laundry? And she said, oh yeah. She said, well, there is.
There
There is
actually
somebody
is.
chasing you. There is. And I think he was the one that come up the stairs and go into Ed's room.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so one of the stories I did also share is when we were transitioning me upstairs and I slept in Ed's room for a couple nights while we
Yeah.
were moving the stuff around. I actually, like, I slept with the door open and saw that guy on the stairs. And I was just going to say for like everybody who's watching, so my brother Ed, it was his room that we're talking about. And it was at the end of the hall, and Ed would shove towels and laundry underneath the door at night when he slept because he said the door would slam open like all the time. So he tried to keep that guy out by blockading his door.
But
Yeah. So I was going to say, so one of the stories I did also share is when we were transitioning me upstairs and I slept in Ed's room for a couple nights while we were moving the stuff around. I actually, like, I slept with the door open and saw that guy on the stairs. And I was just going to say for like everybody who's watching, so my brother Ed, it was his room that we're talking about. And it was at the end of the hall, and Ed would shove towels and laundry underneath the door at night when he slept because he said the door would slam open like all the time. So he tried to keep that guy out by blockading his door.
but the door slamming open was funny because the latch worked perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was another thing that made me go,
Something is amiss.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this stuff, Dad. I think it's kind of crazy
Yeah.
into this
Well,
whole
it's interesting
history.
because there's so much that man does not know. We find stuff all the time, like dark matter that we just suddenly like. There's the universe is made up of 80% of this dark matter. We don't even know if it's matter. We don't even know what it is, but it's an energy or something. Well,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things we don't, and other dimensions we don't really know. We can't explain, and that's just and that's that you realize even as an engineer, you realize that's reality. There's a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know if you don't know it.
That's true. I guess that would be my last question. So I know like you and Mom were practicing Catholics the whole time you were there. Like, do you feel that your experiences there either changed your faith or strengthened it?
I'd say it strengthened it probably. I don't think it didn't have a negative impact on my faith.
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell people. Like when I'm talking to them in person, I'm like, I'd probably be an atheist if I didn't grow up in that house. Like,
Yeah, because how can
there's something. I can't say I
you say
saw all this stuff and lived this and then say there's no, like, there's no soul, there's
exactly?
nothing.
How do you say there's no life? There's no life after death. You
Yeah.
just die. There's no soul.
There's just a
And how are
change
there
in,
spirits? Then how are there all these spirits out there? What the heck's going on then?
yeah.
So that's a great example of, hey, we just don't know, but it kind of strengthens your faith that there is life after death. So I was definitely convinced of that through other sources, not just living there, but just researching. You got me researching other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
other things, other stories. So I think there definitely is life after death. So.
All right, Dad, I very much appreciate you talking about this and showing up just to answer some questions that people have. And I love you so much.
Love you.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, and welcome to part 7 of my ghost stories. If you haven't seen the other parts, there's a playlist at the bottom you can click. I'm actually going to reference a couple videos I've already made, so it might be worth checking them out. So like I said, I'm doing this in a timeline fashion, kind of trying to stick with like what happened in order to get through the story, so I'm not kind of jumping all over the place and causing more confusion. So we're basically now at a point in time where we're getting to my first video, which was about feeling like something was tearing apart the basement, and I tried to run upstairs and something slammed on the door and stopped me from going up there, which then led to my dad hauling my little butt out of the basement and switching around my bedroom for what was originally the study when we first moved in. Ironically and hilariously, because I had picked the basement bedroom, the smallest room upstairs that was left was for the study, and it was a tiny, tiny room. So the oldest kid went from having the whole basement and her own bathroom to having the smallest bedroom upstairs, but I love that little bedroom, I don't care. And then that story, of course, led to me getting moved upstairs, stupidly still sleeping with the door open because I was a child and didn't know any better. And after this incident happened, I never, ever, ever, ever slept with a door open again in my life. In my life, every door must be closed in the place where I'm sleeping. Like, make sure it's latched, all that good noise. So that's kind of brought us to where we are now. So I've gotten moved out of the basement. It's always super active in the basement. Like every night I'm hearing something. It feels like almost every night when I remember it. It probably wasn't, but I just feel like even small things happened like pretty consistently down there. So I've gotten moved upstairs into the smallest bedroom. One of my next videos will have other blueprints of the house for the story. We don't really need them. But I've gotten moved upstairs. I sleep with the door closed, flipping constantly. I am able to sleep a little bit better once I move upstairs because I don't feel initially like it's as active up there. But one of the things that does start and will plague me the entire time I live there is the most atrocious nightmares. And when I say atrocious, I have taught myself how to lucid dream when my dreams turn. So I've never really had full-blown nightmares where like I just am in and it's a nightmare. There's usually something else going on. And then it kind of gets a glimmer and it turns into utter and abject nonsense. I never had sleep paralysis in this house. Like I never woke up paralyzed with something happening to me. I didn't have night terrors, but my baby brother did. But these dreams were they were so vivid and they were so like fucking insane. I can still remember a lot of them. And even to this day, it's been, I mean, I am a full-blown elder millennial. To this day, if on the rare occasion I have a dream that starts to shift, it was so bad for those 5 years I lived in that upstairs bedroom that I literally like in my head will be like, oh, this is about to be something that I want nothing to do with. And I will wake myself up. My subconscious will say, this is a nightmare, wake up. They were just absolutely horrendous. I will say it took trying to think. It didn't take that long before I started getting haunted upstairs. But for a long time, it was never at the same intensity of the basement. That, of course, changed. And I didn't know it at the time because my poor brother was only like 3 years old. But he was, once I moved upstairs, he started getting pretty consistently bothered. So again, if you watch the first video in the series or you remember the story from the stitch I did, I was sleeping in his room. I heard something running up from the basement. And when I opened my eyes and looked down the end of the hallway, there was something on all fours, like literally just sat at the top of the stairs staring at me. And once I called out for my parents, it like ran down the hall at me. So that thing, which my brother later on in life talked about, like came into his room constantly, and his door would like open and like open hard enough where it hit the wall loud enough for him to wake up. So he at a very young age started shoving towels and like his dirty clothes underneath the door to keep that door from flying open. The first thing I kind of remember happening once I moved up to that room was that it's cheap shag carpet. The room was so small that if you I had a queen size bed in there when I was older, and it literally went from the edge of the door jamb, which like the door was like right against the wall, kind of like this door is right here. So it went from like the side of the door all the way to the closet on the other end of the wall, and then you had maybe like 1.5 feet to walk around the edge of the bed at the end of the room. So this is like a tiny, tiny room. It basically could have fit a twin size bed comfortably, and that was it. So I had a twin size bed in there when I moved up there at 12 or 13, and that was like the first thing I remember. I remember hearing, like trying to fall asleep and hearing somebody walking on the carpet in the room and being like, God damn it. Like, I didn't get away from this. Things stayed not pretty calm, but aside from the nightmares and aside from hearing somebody walking around my room, things were pretty calm, calm-ish for, I would say, about maybe 6 or 7 months. I'm trying to place, there's like, some key things happened in life that I can kind of place the timeline around. So that year it was relatively quiet. There wasn't any big, bad, scary thing that happened for most of the year of me being 13. Couple things to end the story with. My next story will be about my mom's experience, because that happened about a year after I moved upstairs, and things started kicking off full blown again once she had an experience. So that one might be a 2-part series. I'm not sure. It might be 2 videos. Again, I made a playlist, so this is part 7. If you want to watch the other stories, feel free to run through the playlist. I'm hoping to get a live together. I'm talking to some of my friends that have had experiences there. My other brothers, understandably, are not really keen on being on video, but they're fine with me sharing stories. So I'm going to get a live together, and I will talk about what happened to my mom in the next video. This is part 8 of my ghost stories. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened that made my mom believe me that the house was haunted. Real quick though, there's a trigger warning for mental health issues and also medical abuse. On top of that, Mama's got to lay down some ground rules. I'm going to be talking about some difficult conversations and scenarios that I had with my mom, and I don't want to hear or read a single bad comment about her. 1, she's dead. She can't come on here like my dad did and talk about what she was doing or how she was feeling when all of this was going down. 2, she was the sunlight of my life, and I have been living in consistent dusk since she died. I'm not going to put up with it. I'll block you and you won't get to hear any more ghost stories, okay? Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit what led up to all of this. So the last time I had talked about these horrible nightmares I was having, I did get to the point where I was pretty consistently spending the night in my parents' room, not necessarily because I was being haunted like I had been when I was down in the basement, but because I was having these horrendous,
horrendous nightmares that like I did not want to even be alone after I had them. So my mom actually took me to the pediatrician a couple times. She had me discuss these nightmares with them. And they told her to ask me more about like maybe something's going on at school. We're in a new school system. We'd, moved down. We're far away from all of my friends. Like maybe she needed to talk to me about other stuff. And so with those conversations, I started saying, hey, I'm seeing this little boy. I've seen this like dark figure crawling around. Like I hear things around my bed all the time. I hear the doorknobs getting messed with. I've seen lights turn on. I've seen doors closed. And her logical brain answer to that was that something psychologically must be wrong with me, to the point where she started hunting around for a doctor who would prescribe me antipsychotic medication. She obviously had a hard time finding a doctor or a therapist who felt, or psychiatrist, I should say, that felt comfortable prescribing me with antipsychotics, because obviously I was not starting to show signs of schizophrenia. I didn't really have many other mental health issues going on, but my mom was determined. I had to see tons of specialists. I had to go through all these tests. She told the school that I was having hallucinations. So then all of the administrators at the school, where I was frankly already kind of really starting to misbehave for several reasons aside from the haunting, I had all these administrators and teachers like treating me almost like a leper, because it was the 90s and like nobody could handle it. Sorry, I have to keep pausing this. This is really hard to talk about, because this was also the springboard that led to the worst time in my relationship with my mom. It just kind of kicked the whole thing off. So our relationship, through her basically not believing me and then pushing me into all these extra tests, and then basically I felt at the time like telling my business that was incorrect to teachers who I didn't like anyway, it made it really hard for the two of us to be in a room together. So I think when this happened to her, I was definitely either almost 14 or just turned 14. But I ended up getting a huge apology from it. So I'm going to tell you what happened to her. Let me pull up the floor plan. Okay, so this is the floor plan of the main floor of my parents' house. So on the night this happened to my mom, she had insomnia my entire life. I think she probably had it her entire life, to be honest. And so one of her tricks was to change the location of where she is and hopefully fall asleep there. So anyway, so she had come downstairs from her room. Let me see if I can get my thumb to show up. And she was sleeping. God, why does it do this? Ridiculous. She was sleeping down here. I'll nod. She was sleeping down here against the wall on the couch. She said she never fell asleep. She was getting close. She was getting more tired. She was actually thinking about going back upstairs. And then this right here is the door to the basement. So the door to the basement was like underneath the stairs that went up to the top level of the house. So she heard the basement door unlock itself and open. But when she looked, because she was laying, remember, oh my God, sorry, I'm so sorry. She was laying like right here. So I don't understand why this is so bad. So I'm going to get rid of this picture in a second. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Hopefully this is better. Holy cow. So she's sleeping right here. Yes, it is. Okay. And she hears this door open. She looks and it's not open. It's closed. However, this is her account that she told me and told so many people around me so many times. She felt someone standing right here staring at her. And she said the energy was so powerful, she followed it as though someone was actually walking through this room and up to her where she was sleeping on the couch. She said she got very cold. She was scared in that she was like, what is going on? but that she didn't get like a feeling that a lot of like myself and come to find out like poor friends that I had sleep over, she wasn't getting this like oppressive, nasty feeling. She just knew something was there, and that she knew she had heard the basement door open, even though it hadn't. Turning that crap off. It's driving me nuts. So she's sitting there, she's laying on the couch, she's looking up at where she feels this energy, but she can't see anything and she doesn't hear anything. And as she's sitting there staring at this, her hair gets physically tucked behind her ear. I'll say that again. Literally, I'll use my grown out undercut, moved behind her ear, like tucked. She said she didn't even feel her feet touch the ground when she got off of the couch and went into the kitchen. And she said she got into the kitchen, spun around and stared back where she just felt this all happen. And she said she literally was like brushing at her hair. And she then felt the energy start walking towards her. So she took off. So she's standing here looking into the room and feels the energy start walking this way. So she hauls ass down this hallway and up the stairs to get back into her bedroom. Gets back into her room, shuts the door and locks it, and goes to gently wake up my father. Now, when she gently woke him up, she was so freaked out. When she grabbed him, she actually left a couple cuts from her nails in his arm. And that's how freaked out she was. And she didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She sat up in bed, just freaked out. Did not sleep that night at all. The next day when I came down for breakfast, she was already waiting for me. And as I made breakfast, she just gave me a really heartfelt apology for not believing me and for, having me go through all these tests and, telling the doctors in the school that something was wrong with me. She then did double down that, like, obviously I have a hormone imbalance or something with all the nightmares I'm having, but she was genuinely apologetic. She was the only person in our house who was ever touched, and this would be the first time she was touched, not the last. All right, y'all, this is a quick part 9, just kind of a follow-up bookend to part 8, which was about how my mom figured out the house was haunted. If you're curious about any of the parts of the series, go ahead and click the playlist at the bottom of this video. You can see everything that I've posted regarding the crazy, crazy house I grew up in. I wanted to follow up with my mom's story by saying that her getting touched kicked off insanity for about a year. Like, it was already insane, but like everything moved upstairs fully after that happened to her, and things happened with more frequency. I continue to have nightmares. I know a couple of people have asked like what the nightmares were, and I can remember like snippets of them, and I've tried actually even saying what they were out loud, but saying them out loud doesn't really even sound that scary. They were just like super realistic. And a lot of times very, very violent. Like I remember one of the dreams I had was that Jack Nicholson shot me point blank in the stomach with a shotgun, and that was pretty much the beginning of the dream, and the rest of it was me just slowly dying from an abdominal wound. In pain, sad I was dying, sobbing. It was like, there was other atrocious ones that I don't even really want to talk about, but they were all very violent. Yeah. So after my mom got touched, I started to hear my name, which gives me shivers even thinking about it. But that's when I started hearing my name and started hearing something say hello often. I think no matter your belief background, if you're hearing that, it's not good. It's nothing benevolent is trying to get your attention that way. I don't think. So I started hearing that, and so did my little brother. He started hearing his name. He would talk about it. This was when he really, really started barricading his door at night. I started out the year of 14 with my twin bed close to the door, and I will, in the next video, put this up on the floor plan so you can see. And what I heard outside in the hallway and against the door got so insane that I actually moved my bed across the room so that I could sleep facing the door, but not next to it, so I didn't have to hear the scratching, the doorknob jingling, the footsteps, the running, my name, hello, all that fun stuff. And once my mom got touched, she was in the club, baby. Ooh, yeah, she was in the club. They followed her around the house. She started hearing walking in her bedroom while she was trying to sleep, or when she was suffering from insomnia. And she started hearing doors opening and closing in the basement. So, yeah, it was an insane year, both in and out of the house. So I'm excited to talk about the next pretty severe thing that happened to me. I will be posting that in the next couple days. I appreciate everybody's patience and actually still like watching these. It's kind of cool. It's a drag sometimes to kind of relive this stuff. And, sometimes I lose sleep just because I'm so geeked up from just talking about it and remembering it and reliving it. So I appreciate your patience. I also appreciate you still watching. And tomorrow, Thursday, May 8th, no, May 9th, Thursday, May 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to do a quick live. I don't know how long I'll be on. We'll just kind of play it by ear, but I'm going to do basically a Q&A format. I've noticed a lot of comments asking the same question. I know a lot of questions that have been asked. I can't really fully type out what the answer is, and unfortunately I don't have enough time in the day to just do like video responses to try to answer everybody's questions. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered, or you just want to talk about spooky stuff, I will be on a live tomorrow night, Thursday, May 9th at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Trying a shorter form video. This is part 10. My mom got bothered a bunch after she got touched. She worked in the office 3 days a week, and she worked from home, she actually didn't work from home, lies. She was at home 2 days a week, and pretty much right after she got touched, she started really disliking being home alone. She heard people walking around. She heard doors opening and closing. It's like a week or two after she was touched. My brother and I came home from school, and she was sitting in the kitchen, like making her lists. And she was like, "Oh, good, you're home. I can finish laundry." And like, come to find out, she had been in the middle of doing laundry in the basement where the laundry room was. And the feeling got so bad and like aggressive down there that she was so freaked out. She like turned the washing machine off, left the clothes to be folded just like out, and then like came upstairs and shut the door and like waited for us to come home from school because she was too scared to be down there by herself. Another thing that happened, I'm going to keep this really short because it looks like short videos are the things I can actually post right now. Another thing that happened, she and I were watching a movie. It was a Friday or Saturday night. My brothers were out with my dad somewhere. I don't remember where. And we were watching a movie in the family room by the kitchen, and the basement door that was in the kitchen unlatched itself and just opened slowly. And my mom just got off the couch and walked over to the door and went, "No, thank you," and shut it and locked it. And in hindsight, we probably should have made sure, we were actually alone in the house, but nothing happened after she shut it. It was really nice it was really validating to be in a room with somebody when something like that happened. Even though we had already been talking about how we were experiencing the same things, just having something happen with another person in the room, like, totally made me feel less, like, insane about all the stuff that was going on. I'm back. I think I figured it out. I think if I keep these videos under 5 minutes, they'll post for whatever reason. I think maybe I have too many long form videos. Whatever. This is part 11. Get excited. Okay, so a little bit of a trigger warning. I'm going to be talking about something not pleasant. So there was something big that happened to me when I was 14 that actually I saw something because of. And also the consequences of it actually had me removed from the house for a little bit. So just a little trigger warning that I'm going to be talking about something unpleasant. but I have to talk about it in a veiled way because TikTok will remove this if I don't. So at 14, I had a friend and she chose to leave. She had a really rough home life. She had she just had a really rough life, and she and I got in big trouble at school, and she decided she didn't want to be here anymore. So the last thing she said to me was that she wanted to leave. And unfortunately, because I was 14, no adult listened to me when I told them that she had said that. And because my family was dealing with the fallout of us getting in trouble at school, that just took the focus away from everything. And I was enraged, to put it mildly, like enraged when I found out later that day. So yeah, it was just a tough time. The next day, we found out kind of late in the morning that the school had lifted my suspension and wanted me back at the school for grief counseling, trauma counseling, all that good stuff. Mind you, like, we're in 8th grade. This is middle school. It was like she was young. And I was in the shower. I was, doing my thing. And then I noticed movement in the bathroom through the like frosted glass of the shower doors. And when I looked, it kind of looked like someone was standing there, but not really. So I opened the door to see if like maybe somebody had opened the door and peeked in and wanted to say something or tell me to hurry up, or my mom was saying something else about whatever was going on, whatever. When I opened it, she was there. She was very diluted. Like, I didn't really see or notice much like below her shoulders, but she was as tall as she was in real life. I could see her hair. I could clearly see her face. Even though it was kind of like looking at it through like fog is the best way to describe it. She didn't move. She didn't say anything. She didn't have any specific like facial expression. She just kind of stared at me like the child spirit used to do, like, blank stare. But I all of a sudden, like when I laid eyes on her, I felt this like wave of grief and just like sadness. And then also another wave of like calm and serenity. And I just got this like overwhelming feeling from her of like, don't be angry. Like, this is sad. All of this is sad, but like, don't be so, like, be at peace with this. Don't be so angry. She was the first person I saw after they passed away. Like, I'd had other family members pass, and I'd had pretty explicit dreams about them after they passed away, but she was the first person I saw, and she actually wasn't the last. There was a couple of other people who passed that I saw later on in life, which I will cover in another video. I did decide, because I couldn't, again, it was the 90s. None of the adults in my life were at all equipped to deal with this. And I, at 14, was not equipped to emotionally and mentally deal. And so I decided about a month later that maybe she had the right idea. And I was unsuccessful, obviously, because I'm here telling you the story. But that got me taken out of the house for several months, which, funnily enough, had me taken to a place that's also well known to be quite haunted in Colorado. But I was never bothered while I was there. And I had 4 months of basically intense counseling and grief therapy. So that's it. Next one won't be so heavy, I promise. This is part 12 of my ghost stories. So I'm going to tell you what happened the night that made me decide I needed to buy a lock for my door and that I needed to move my bed. So my room was right here. It was actually not as long as this. It was basically more of a square. But at the beginning of the story, my bed was kind of, how can I make this work? My bed was like right next to this door here. There was also, just to kind of set it up, a closet door on this wall between my bedroom and my brother's bedroom. So the night that this happened, I just woke up in the middle of the night, and like, I don't remember anything happening before that. I just woke up and I had to go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom, I went and laid back down. As I was getting settled back down, I heard somebody run up these stairs and run towards my youngest brother's room. I actually thought maybe when I was going to the bathroom, he had to get up and he went, there was like a bathroom on the main floor just under my room. So I thought maybe he went downstairs and used the bathroom, and he's like doing what you do. It's the middle of the night, like running back upstairs and running to your room if you're, a little kid or living in a haunted house and terrified constantly. So I went and looked. There was no sound coming from his room, and I never heard or saw his door shut. So I was like, well, okay, it probably wasn't him. So then I shut my door and I kind of turned so that I was facing the door with my back to the closet. And pretty soon after that, I started hearing scratching at the door, which I'd heard before, was the scratching's like, it's almost like a cat without claws, like scratching. So if you can like imagine like a cat's pad kind of rolling down the door, that's what it sounded like. So I started hearing that. That went on for a little bit, off and on. I was not going back to sleep because like I can't sleep when that's going on. Then I started hearing my name being whispered through the door, and also hello, hey, hello, like a lot. It was like a pretty fervent amount of activity happening. And in one of the times where like there was just a little bit of, a minute or two of silence in between, I actually heard hey come from the corner of my room down here by the window. Now I also had a mirror like right here in the corner. That's where I did my makeup. So when I turned foolishly to look in the corner, I didn't see anything here, but in the mirror, I actually saw a reflection of the shadow dude standing in my room in that corner by the window. Sorry, let me catch my breath. Yeah, standing there. Now I never saw a face on him. I never saw eyes. I never saw any like facial features, but it felt like he was in reality in my room that I couldn't see, staring at my reflection through the mirror. Like we were staring at each other through the reflection. And at this point, I'm like levitating off the bed. And then when I'm getting ready to be like, I need to get the hell out of here, which again, this is like nanoseconds, right? But when you're this terrified, it feels like it's forever. I hear a huge bang on my closet door. And when I tell you, I literally floated off the bed and I ran out to my parents' room right here and immediately like came up to them and was like, dear God in heaven, I have to sleep. Get rid of that nonsense. So yeah, so I spent the night in my parents' room. I don't think they even believed me. At this point, I'm like, I may have already been 15 at this point, or I was close to 15. Like I think half the time when I was like, this is what's happening in my room, not like they didn't think like, oh, like, no, you're wrong. This house isn't haunted. Obviously that had passed, but it was like, okay, like it's that serious. Like it's that serious. So I stayed there. The next day I got on my bike and I rode to the nearest hardware store that was like 1.5 miles away. And I purchased a doorknob with a lock with my allowance money to lock the door. And then I moved my bed basically up under the window so that I could have my back to the window and I could see the rest of the room. I could see the door and I could see the closet and I could like keep tabs on what was going on around me. Okay, I'm going to push this into a part 13 since I'm getting close to 5 minutes. Yay, I get to make another one of these. You may have noticed that part 12 looked like it probably needed a part 13 and nothing happened. And that's because I can't get any more videos to load. So I have been in contact with TikTok again. They have been less than helpful again. So apparently people were outside starting the lawn mow, so I came inside to finish this. So yeah, basically TikTok's of no help. They're like, oh, restart the app, restart your phone, do all this other shit that doesn't do anything. I'm not getting reported as far as I know. Like I'm not getting any notifications of being reported. I'm not, like, TikTok's not reaching out to me. I don't have any appeals sitting unanswered. So I don't know what the hell's going on with that. And then I'm like, as all the research I've done, I don't think there's actually a timeline on videos. The closest I've gotten on the Reddit forum for TikTok help is that I guess they had like a glitch uploaded on the new update in April, at the end of April, that like if TikTok doesn't think your videos are original every time you post, or that you're posting the same content constantly, then they like shadow ban you. So I think that's what's happening, which means I'm going to have to slow down how often I post, which it's already slowed down, right? It's been like a freaking week. I'm just gonna have to slow down how I post, and I'm going to have to probably be a little bit more tricksy about being like, this is part 13, this is whatever. So I hope you're seeing this. If you are seeing this, I'm sorry. I'm really trying to, I want to tell these stories. It just sucks that this keeps happening. I am going to do a live tomorrow or Thursday, and I'm going to do another one over the weekend that's earlier in the day for those particularly in the UK that they can maybe catch it around dinner time. So I'll do some lives. I have some ideas upcoming for things that I can do to, like, I don't know, keep the spooky train rolling. So I will keep you all posted as much as I can. Thanks.
Okay, so obviously, like, I know as an adult now, like, buying a lock for a door is not going to stop what was happening from happening, but as a teenager who was having such a hard time, it really made me feel better to do that. It didn't do much, and I didn't even think about it, but moving my bed the way I did put me so that when I'm sleeping, I'm looking directly into the mirror I had, which also was, may I say, the coolest, most beautiful vintage mirror from my great aunt. It was amazing. But stupidly, like, I could look right into it. What did I see in it, you ask? Oh my God, I would see my closet doors opening a little bit, like they just kind of would move around. I would see shadows passing through there, like over the mirror, and like it was like nonstop. I eventually, after several months, put a shirt over the mirror when I started sleeping, which is hilarious because my parents were not pleased that I started doing that for the wrong reasons. They weren't like, oh God, it's getting so bad that you're actually covering up your mirror when you go to sleep at night. No, they were like, this kid is listening to that freaking metal music and she's probably worshiping Satan in there and practicing witchcraft, and how can we tell? Because she's covering her goddamn mirror. Ridiculous. Also, it never, like, at 15, I didn't have the full frontal cortex formed enough to be like, oh, take the mirror out. Just take it out. Don't cover it up with a shirt. I don't know. Take it out. Take it out of the room. No, I didn't do that. I did also, very often after I moved my bed, and after that last incident, I saw the little child spirit like a lot in my room. It was always when I had woken up from something, he was always just kind of standing there, but always his full apparition self. It wasn't his shadow form. Like, I never saw his shadow form again. And he just would be staring at me for like a beat, and then he would go off to wherever he went off to. So I saw him a lot. Moving my bed helped with the waking up or not being able to sleep because of the running in the hallway, the scratching at the door, the saying my name. I mostly, when I heard my name after I moved my bed, it would be in the morning getting ready in that mirror with the door open while like the whole family's, like, I think my dad would probably have already been gone for the day, but like definitely my brothers would be getting ready with my mom, like eating breakfast, whatever. And I'd hear, like, at my doorway, I'd hear my name, and I'd, of course, like, look, and there'd be no one there. Everyone's downstairs, like, around the kitchen table eating breakfast or getting their backpacks ready for school. So that was just, like, wild, wild times. And, you know, things... So when this when that happened and when I moved my bed, I think I was about 15, and things... I turned into a real wild child around this time. So I also stopped sleeping at our house a lot. I took off often, and I stayed wherever my little head could find rest, for better or for worse. I am very lucky that I was surrounded by people who were not completely nefarious, horrendous human beings, and I am alive today relatively unscathed from my behavior at 15. So the next stories that I have coming up, like I will have been a little bit older. So you might notice in the timeline there's a jump. And there's a jump because I just was living my life. Really, really thinking I was living, you know, I was 15 going on 35 and I knew what I was doing and nobody could tell me nothing. So yeah, so you might notice a big jump, but yeah, that was also one of the last times that my, part 12 was one of the last times I actually saw that shadow figure, like fully saw him. So if you are wondering what the hell this story is about, there's a playlist at the bottom of the page. Click through it. So I think I agree with my dad on this one when I really think about it. I think it was just about 100 days, roughly a year on average, that haunting stuff happened. Some years were crazier and some years were more subdued, but on average about 100 days a year. Also, like, it was very rare that big things happened, which are like a lot of the stories I'm sharing because I remember them because
it was so insane. You know, a lot of the times when we talk about like these 100 days, it'd be like, oh, I just hear people walking around in my room, or I hear like a doorknob getting jingled one night. The really big things that stick with us that are memorable, those were much more rare. Maybe something a year happened. And it just depended on what was going on in the house, what was going on in our lives. If my parents were like doing construction in the house, that kind of depended on how many big crazy things happened. It definitely was more active when we first moved in, and then it kind of went in waves. Then it like was less active for a little bit, and then it kind of ramped back up, went back down. But I would say, yeah, overall, maybe about 100 or so days a year. So when you add that up over like almost 30 years, you know, like maybe 30% of the time something happened. And my dad had said in his video, like that was one of the reasons they didn't sell. It just wasn't active enough for them to want to leave.
So by the time I turned 16, I was causing enough trouble that my parents thought it was pertinent to take my door off the hinges, which sucked for several reasons. One being like, I'm a teenage girl with 2 little brothers, and I now have no privacy. But then also like that was my barrier between myself while I was sleeping and whatever was going on in the hallway. So I was like a super bummer town. When this incident happened, like I remember I woke up in the middle of the night. I might have not even really been sleeping, but I popped out my screen and climbed onto the roof and had a cigarette in the middle of the night, as I was wont to do as a teenager. And then I came back in, and I just remember like kind of staring up at the sky, being like, okay, because I was, you know, sleeping basically right under the window. And then I was like, I'll roll over and go to bed. And I rolled over, and there was just a wall of black in my doorway. Like, there was a window in the hallway, and there was a window in the bathroom across the hallway from my bedroom. So every other night, like I could see in the hallway, shadowy, you know, still hard to see because it's nighttime, but like this was like a wall of black, like a black curtain had gone over the doorway. And I just stared at it. It didn't feel, you know, like usually when the shadow guy showed up, there was intense fear that came along with him. Like he was such an aggressive, scary, oppressive, like presence. It wasn't any of that. It just like, I remember sitting there and being like, am I high? Like what is this? It felt like I stared at it for forever, but honestly, probably in real time, it was anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds. And I decided like, the best thing to do would be to crawl back out on the roof and have another smoky treat and like let whatever was happening like go away. I definitely was unsettled enough that I didn't want to sit in the room and like wait for it to work itself out. So I went and crawled back out. And of course, the second time I crawled out, that woke up my mom, who was just 2 windows down. And so in the middle of my middle of the night siesta, I hear this, what the fuck are you doing? And I turn around, it's my mom. She's in the doorway, and like the black is gone. And I asked her if she saw anything when she left her room. She said no. She was not really into hearing any of my bullshit because she was so pissed that I was smoking at like God knows what time of night. I don't remember what time it was. And then also my parents had a wood shingle roof in Colorado. So like fire danger for my stupid ass to be out there smoking. And also my room faced the street. So she was convinced any of our neighbors could have been up at that point in time, and they would have just seen me out there, and what would we do? So that was kind of crazy. That was the last thing I remember, you know, when I've been like journaling about this stuff. I don't remember much else between that and like pretty much 19 years old. I was a really crazy kid. I got kicked out the day I turned 18, and I left for a year. So, so the next story I will bring about will be when I was 19. Also, I'm working today on illustrating what the child spirit looked like. So hopefully I'll get a video posted today or tomorrow about that. One of the questions I get asked a ton is what the little boy/child spirit looked like, and also if he was good or not. So I drew him. I'm going to share that in a second. But I first wanted to say I get a lot of comments that, you know, children, if you see children's spirits, they're not kind It's usually a more malevolent spirit, tricking you. And I will say that I think a lot of times that's true. But typically those spirits, when they are manifesting themselves as children, as young children, are very playful because they want you to engage with them. So, you'll hear laughing, giggling, they try to play with toys. I've seen like some videos where if you put a toy out, they'll like knock it over or something. This was not that. Like, this child was never having a good time. As sad as that is, I'm laughing because it makes me so uncomfortable. He was never having a good time. And the way he showed up to me and to other people, I do think he was very much manifested energy of a passed on child, a human that unfortunately passed from illness very young. And I think more than anything, he was just curious. Now, if he had been, a lot of times when people saw him, he would be hiding like kind of down a hallway or behind a door, kind of peeking out, or that he'd be at like the foot of the bed they were sleeping in. He never was trying to interact with anybody. It was just kind of like, he just appeared. And a lot of times when I made eye contact with him, it was both like, we were both kind of like, hey, like he was surprised I saw him kind of, and I was surprised he was there. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. He really was, I truly believe, and was also told by the medium, like he was a benevolent spirit. He just was kind of stuck. He had died very young and didn't understand and was stuck. So anyway, this is what he looked like. I'm so sorry. Pardon my drawing skills. So again, pardon my awful drawing skills, but this is basically what he looked like. He had like shoulder length blonde hair. He looked like his eyes were just like so dark, like he hadn't been sleeping well. He was just like really, really sick. He had like sunken cheeks, and he was holding like a homemade teddy bear, almost always with his arms kind of crossed like this. And the sailor's uniform, like I never really saw much below his waist, so I don't know if it was like a full-size dress or if he had like shorts on with it, but he definitely had like the blue kind of collar that opened up, which is why I called it like a sailor uniform. It was white with like these blue edges. So yeah, I might try to draw the shadow guy, although I'm really freaked out about doing it, but I might try. We'll see. Anyway, I hope that kind of helped give a visualization. And again, sorry for my bad drawing skills. So I recorded something last night. I really thought it would go through, but I'm having issues again. So hopefully this goes through. I'm going to tell you two stories. One, they're both about friends, but one my dad had touched on in one of his videos, which was my brother had a really close friend in high school who I think had spent the night at our house and had a really bad dream. And then like the following day or a couple days later, he called my mom while he was at school, and he
Why is she baby?
asked her.
Why is she baby?
So he called my mom from school. This was back before cell phones, so he literally like called the house phone from a payphone and said he wanted to come over and have lunch with her. So he came over. My mom had said when he first showed up, he was like really, really quiet and obviously like kind of nervous to talk to her. And she totally thought like, oh no, like is there like a pregnancy scare or something? And I'm the safe adult. What am I gonna do? So he told her about this nightmare he had, and he was like, in this house, a lot of nightmare type stuff was happening to our whole family. And there was a particularly bad dude there who was covered in shadow and was really going after all of us and him. And in his dream, at the end of it, he got to like the top floor and was able to get out of a window and jump and start running through a field to get away. And in his dream, when he turned around and looked, he saw my brother saying, send somebody, to come like save us. Of course, it was a lot darker than that, but I feel like the last time I told the story, it was maybe too dark, and that's why TikTok wouldn't publish it. So, yeah, so he had this like crazy nightmare. So he's telling my mom this nightmare, and he goes, I hate to tell you, but I'm pretty sure your house is haunted. And at this point, we were telling no one outside of the family. So my mom was like, that's an observation, an astute observation. It is. Have you talked to John about any of this? And he said, no, for some reason he came to her first. I don't know why he did. I never really talked to him too much about it. I don't know how much my brother talked to him about it. or my mom. She just kind of said that she like confirmed like, yeah, it's haunted. And, you know, he and my brother were like inseparable. And after that dream that he had, he was really hesitant ever to spend the night. It was really hard for my brother to get him to like stay over. They were about 16 or 17 at this point. So it's not like sleepovers were, you know, happening constantly or like an end all be all, but like they'd stay up and play video games or play guitars together. So that was really interesting. I really don't know why he felt like he needed to tell my mom first or like tell her in the middle of the day at school. It really bothered him that much that he felt that's what he needed to do. I had another friend, this was around the same time. I think this happened after, but I can't really remember. And this guy was like, I was like remembering this. I really wish I was a more fully formed adult when I knew this kid. He was a very formed, full frontal cortex, like completely formed human being. And I just, as I'm thinking about it, I just wish I had also been a little bit more mature and grown, because he just was so cool, and I wish I was still friends with him. But anyway, a bunch of us came over to my parents' house. I was living there at the time. I had come back from not living there. I was going back to high school to try to graduate before the laws in Colorado wouldn't let me attend high school anymore, and I'd have to get my GED. I can't remember why we were at the house, but we were going into the basement either to get something or hang out down there. I can't remember which. But before this guy even entered my parents' house, he like stopped outside and was just kind of looking and looked at me and was like, this is quite the place you have here. And I was like, you know, I didn't realize what he was trying to say. And I was just like, yeah, well, you know, it's my parents. It's not mine. I just live here. And then when we went inside, he let everybody go in front of him to go down to the basement. And he was like, he seemed hesitant. When he got to the bottom, he got to like literally the floor after the last stair down to the basement, and he stopped immediately and just went, I'm not going to go any further. I'm not going a single step further. And I like turned around. I was like, why? And he was like, there's no way. I'm not going to do it. And I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of bad vibes down here. And he was like, I don't know. He literally said, I don't know how you people live here. I don't know how you even live in this. He's like, I can't. He's like, do whatever you guys are going to do. I'm going to hang out either upstairs or out front. I don't want anything to like do with down here. And he turned around and went upstairs. And I can't remember. I was racking my brain if we stayed there or if like we were staying or if we left. I can't remember if he like ended up having, I don't remember how the rest of that day panned out, but I do remember the next time we hung out at my boyfriend at the time's house, everyone was like asking him about it. And they're like, what happened? Like, why would you go down there? And I was kind of asking without like really pushing, like, did you feel something? Like what, you know, basements are always kind of spooky, but like what happened? And he just was like, I don't even want to talk about it. He's like, I don't want to bring that energy over here or around me. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk to you about what I felt. Nothing. And he's like, it is crazy to me that you all live there. And he's like, and that you leave here and go back to there to sleep. He's like, I cannot believe it. So he never said like if he saw anything or what exactly he felt, but it was obviously bad enough that he didn't want anything to do with it. I should also say that like this guy was the last person I'd expect to be that way. He was kind of like a stone cold badass. Like he, you know, for how young we were, like I was like 20, he wasn't much older than me, like 1 or 2 years. And he worked in a tattoo studio. He had tons of piercings and tattoos. He rode motorcycles. He, was living on the edge, you know, but like, I just never expected that from him. So anyway, crazy stuff. Sorry again, I didn't get this posted last night. I did try. Honest try was made.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
Okay, so this is part 2 of more stories. I already did a part 1 on 2 bizarre ghost stories I had. I have many ghost stories since childhood because, long story short, me and my sister came to the conclusion, because I'm a clairvoyant, like my grandfather was, it's not so much that every house we've lived in was inherently haunted. Things got attracted to me. That's what we started to figure out. I was the common denominator. Anyway, so this story is actually kind of bizarre, and I don't really know how to explain this. So most ghost stories we hear about are things like, apparitions, shadow entities, shadow people, demons, all that stuff, right? Well, this ghost story right here is not so much a ghost, but it's inanimate objects moving. So let me explain. So in my first stitch that I made with this creator, I talked about how I lived in a house in Seabrook that was haunted by the ghost of a Native American. And me and my brother would see him, and we were afraid of him. We called him the white man because his skin was very white, like a fluorescent light bulb. So we lived in that house till the year 2000. We moved to a city called Friendswood and lived there for 1 year in a rent house, while our new house in Seabrook was being built that our parents had commissioned in this neighborhood called Seabrook Island. And the rent house, nothing happened in. But in the Seabrook Island house, something very bizarre happened one day that I can't explain. And it's kind of freaky because my dad had a similar experience when he was a child that we didn't even know about till years later. So in the living room, my mom had this big giant TV stand that had like shelves. It was very, very big, like the size of a wall. And on the bottom right shelf, she had a statue of the Virgin Mary. Now, this statue it looked like a deep or a dark blue marble. And it was of the Virgin Mary. Now, it didn't have details like an eyes or a nose or anything. It was just like somebody kind of smoothly was getting the rough details made into clay, if that makes sense. Like, you could see the halo, but the halo was like connected to the head, and like there was just like a blank, it was all flat where the face was supposed to be. It was purposely designed like this, but you could tell it was the Virgin Mary. Well, one time we're watching cartoons, me and my brother, and the statue, she just starts to move. And she's like a solid piece of marble or whatever the hell she was made of. And like, she's moving weird like this. I know this looks kind of silly, like, almost like she's at a rave or something. But she just starts like moving and doing weird shit like this. And me and my brother are like, I'm 6, he's 8. And we're like, looking at each other like, are you fucking seeing this? And we were terrified from that one experience. That was the only time that ever happened. We saw that statue move, but we were afraid of that statue, and we would always put it in the shelf underneath where it was, because this giant TV stand had like 3 shelves, big open space for the TV, and then 3 shelves going down, and then like 2 cabinets below each side with like double doors. They were like maybe like 1.5 by 1.5, not very big. But we used to put the statue inside the cabinet below, where she was sitting, because we were afraid of her. And our mom would get so pissed at us, like, because we wouldn't put the statue away in front of her. We would do it when she wasn't around or wasn't looking, but she would get so pissed at us, and it was weird, right? An inanimate object moving like it's alive, like breaking the laws of physics, right? Well, here's the crazy part. So I must have been in about my mid-20s when my dad told me this. I'm about to be 30. So like for age reference, I'm turning 30 on April 30th. I was in my mid-20s, and my dad told me the craziest paranormal experience he ever had was, he said, when he was a little boy in his parents' house, and my grandma died recently, but my grandpa still lives in that same house. He said when he was a little boy, he was sitting on the bed in my grandparents' bedroom, his parents' bedroom, and he said there was this statue of the Virgin Mary that literally jumped off the dresser or whatever the hell she was on, a nightstand, something, vanity. She was on something. She jumped off, and she got on the bed with my dad, and she sat down next to him, and she talked to him about things. My dad says he doesn't remember what they talked about, but I'm telling you, my dad, he will let you call him every name in the book. He will never, ever, though, let you convince him that he was crazy or it was his imagination. He was about 4 or 5 years old, and he remembers it so, so vividly. Oh, sorry, my air conditioner turned on. He said she literally jumped off the dresser or whatever it was, she got on the bed and she sat down next to him and she talked, and then to him about whatever it was, he doesn't remember, and then she got back on the dresser. And that was something that he experienced that never happened again. Now, I have a question to any of you out there that are psychics or mediums or clairvoyants or intuitives, whatever you want to call yourself, doesn't matter. So like I said, I'm a clairvoyant like my grandpa was. I'm an imagery-based psychic. There's different types of psychics. There's clairaudience, clairessence, claircognizance. There's different types, right? Mine is more like imagery-based things. So here's a question for you, if any of you can help me with this. So since I was a child, as long as I can remember, I see these sparkles that start to happen out of nowhere. Now, these sparkles are totally random. They can happen at the most random day, the most random time, any location, alone in the house, busy theme park, at work. They're so random. And I don't know how to describe what it is or what's going on. It's like all of a sudden, I just will start to see these sparkles zooming across everywhere. And they're like green and yellow and silver and red and all these different colors. And they just start to zoom and zoom and zoom across. And like when I see them happening, you know, I'm always like in a trance state. And I'm like sitting there and my eyes are going back and forth. And, you know, I have friends and coworkers over the years have asked me, they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, are you okay? You know, they've like questioned, are you okay, Caleb? And, you know, I explained to them, I've actually been very honest and open and just told people about it. And surprisingly, nobody's like been mean or rude about it, but I've never been able to explain what it is, like, or to get an explanation. Like, I had a friend one time who was like, oh yeah, I see those too. Like if I rub my eye, I'm like, no. It's not like static when you rub your eye. It looks like little sparkles and they're like zooming across in all these different areas. Like they zoom and disappear, but there's multiple of them, all these different colors. And like I said, it's at the most random time that these sparkles happen. And I don't know what they are, what they mean. Like there's no correlation. Like in all the haunted houses that I've lived in, the sparkles didn't happen before, you know, poltergeist activity happened. It's just random. Like I saw them about a week ago sitting on my porch outside, just sitting down, you know, on the nice sunny day. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm like, they're just zooming everywhere. I don't know what the hell it is. Like clearly it has something to do psychic wise, but I don't know what it means. The only thing I was ever able to find was there was a woman who wrote a book for parents of psychic children. And I can't remember the title of the book, but you can look it up. You can just Google it. She either said, do your kids see sparkles or do your children see sparkles? I don't know if she used the word kids or children. I can't remember right now. But just type in either one of those and you'll probably find the book. I didn't buy the book. I just read the description. She's like the only person that's like, I've been able to find any sort of explanation on this. I did find a Reddit post years ago where somebody said they could see like these silver sparkles, but mine aren't silver. It's like, yeah, there is silver, but there's all these different colors and I don't know what they are or what it is. And it's weird. Right after I tell people about it, I see them. I'll see them within hours, days, maybe a week at most. And sometimes I can go 6 months without seeing them. Sometimes I see them twice in 1 week. But usually in a given year, I probably don't see them more than like 6 or 7 times in a year. But it's funny because more than half the time each year, when I see them, right before I see them, I was telling someone about them and then they show up. I don't know what the hell these sparkles are. Like I said, I've been seeing these since I was a child. If any psychics or mediums have any answers, let me know. But yeah, I got more stitches to do for this because I got a lot of stories.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Forgive me, as I am not a storyteller on TikTok, and I've only actually told this story to some childhood friends growing up. I've never talked about it on the internet before, so bear with me. This is about my childhood home in Florida. I lived there for 11 years, and there were a lot of unexplainable things that happened to not just me, but my parents. My parents denied it for a very long time until it reached a point that we couldn't. So to kind of start at the beginning, when we moved in, there was definitely a shift like in the energy of the house, and my dad would often talk about feeling really cold spots. He'd be like, come here, like feel this area. Does this seem really cold to you? And I think my mom would just write it off. Like we never talked about it. I remember one time my dad was opening a bottle of wine in the kitchen, and I watched it happen. My mom was there. I was like 6 years old, 7 years. I mean, I was young. I wasn't drinking, but this cork, he like did it on the counter. It came off the bottle and somehow kept jumping. Like the momentum kept the cork like jumping around the kitchen, and he like couldn't catch it. And he was like, man, like he was like, this is so weird. Like he got really frustrated. It was just a weird thing that happened. Another time that I only found out years later, my parents were cooking and they had a knife on the counter, like to chop something, and it flew from the counter into the wall. I didn't know about that for years. We never talked about it. So, as I grew older, I started to notice that my door would open on its own, and I had my dad take apart the door handle. I had him check the level of the door to maybe see if it was the weight of the air, like something was not level and was just creaking. No, I mean, the door handle would turn and release, like someone was opening it. And he would sit there right after it happened and look at me and say, Tess, nothing is wrong with this door. I don't know what to tell you. It's fine. It's in your imagination. So, it just reached a point where I became so irritated and frustrated that I seemed to be the only one kind of experiencing these things. Now, we had a kitchen table set of chairs and a table that was all made of wood. My parents had it since like the 90s. Like it was something that they had invested in, so it was like heavy furniture, right? Sturdy. There was one seat at the table that would creak as if someone was sitting in it, like there was heavy weight in it. And my mom would notice it so much, mainly because she spent the most time in the kitchen, like cooking food for us and whatnot, that she started rotating the chairs every time she cleaned or swept under them to see if it was just one chair. And it wasn't all 4 chairs that happened. It was only one spot in the kitchen that creaked as if someone was sitting there. Unexplainable noises and things would happen. Like my dad, one time I was sitting eating breakfast at like 6:30 and we're about to leave. And he looks at me, he goes, Tess, you're not going to believe this. He was like, I, in the middle of the night, woke up to a sound of glass breaking on the floor in the living room. He goes, I, ran out here, couldn't find a thing. Nothing was moved. Nothing was touched. Didn't make any sense. He was like, I don't understand. I don't get it. Now, I will also add, like, I had some freaky experiences in this house, like weird dreams, things in my room in the middle of the night would be flying around my room. Like, I would be pitch black because I needed to sleep with the lights out, but I would hear drawers of my desk being thrown open and papers just being thrown everywhere. I mean, I had no clue how to talk about this or how to deal with it growing up. I was a very odd kid, for sure. And I didn't know how to deal with this at home. So as this was happening, as I grew older, my parents denied it a lot because they didn't want to scare my younger brother, who was 3 years younger. I can understand that. I wish that they had talked to me separately more and just empathized with me, because I was always told it was my imagination. Until this one experience, about a year before we moved out of the house, I was playing piano. I was maybe 16 years old. It was midday, beautiful day out, no weather. No one was in the house with me. My mom and my brother were playing tennis, like, a couple minutes away. It was their like Saturday afternoon thing that they did. And I was playing piano by myself. The alarm to the house was on, so anytime you opened a window or door, it would ding and you knew someone was in the house. My parents were kind of like freaks about that, but you never know. It's always safe to have. So anyway, goes to show there was no one in the home with me. I stopped playing piano for a second, and I picked up my phone, and I start hearing a man running down the hallway. Like, I hear the feet hitting the floor, and like I hear a man's heavy breathing as if he's just run a marathon. And so I turn and I look at the main part of the hallway, the main center of the house. It was a one level home. Every room was kind of connected to each other. It was more of an open concept. And I hear the running come in the room, and it stops in front of me and goes completely silent. Silent. And I just lost my mind. I could not handle it anymore. I was like, I am so done. I'm up to here. No one's believed me. And look, I'm hearing someone in the home, and there's no one here. How do you explain that? So I run outside. I call my mom. I'm like, drop everything. Get in the car right now and come get me. Drop everything. Like, I need you to come get me. It's an emergency. She comes and picks me up. She looks at me in the car. She goes, Tessa, what happened? She was like, I've never seen you so white in the face. So she brings me back to the tennis lesson that my brother's having. And one of her friends is there who claims to be a psychic. Now, why I say it with air quotes is because she was a very nice woman. And she knew things about our family that you could not find on the internet, that are not known to anyone other than my parents. She knew things about our family heritage, names and places and things that had happened that are not public knowledge. And I only say with air quotes because they were suspicious of her at the time, and I, looking back, believe her. She came up to my mother and was like, what was wrong? Like, why did you have to leave so suddenly? Like, what happened? And my mom was like, oh, Tess just like heard something, and I had to go get her. And this woman looks at my mother and goes, there was someone in your house. I'm coming over as soon as we're done with this lesson, and we need to figure this out. So she comes over. She and her husband got involved. I don't know how, but he got involved, and they talked to a spirit who was in the home. His name was George, and he died young, so they told me that he didn't really have much in his life. He died tragically or something, and he had become attached to us somehow. He found us somehow. She said maybe it was like we were at the grocery store, like the spirits can become just attached to you. If you are, it just can happen. So she said that he became attached to my mother because he thought she was, he just liked us. And then as I grew older, he developed a crush on me. And wanted to run and hear my piano because he liked hearing it. So after we moved out of that, once we were like moving out of that home about a year later for my dad's career, I told him, I just said out loud, I was like, please do not follow us. Stay here or go wherever. Like, we don't belong with us. So, that's what happened. And he did not follow us. I've had a few experiences since then, not nearly as extreme. But needless to say, it was very traumatic. And looking back, I don't even talk to my parents about it. So that was my childhood.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I'm back with a part 2 for stories from growing up in a haunted house. I made a little list of all of the like smaller stories and things that I didn't talk about in the first part because they weren't like eye-opening or anything. They're just like kind of strange things that happened. The first one would be where my mother like would lose her keys. And what I mean by that is it only happened like 3 or 4 times, but we'd be ready to leave the house and my mom would look in her purse and she'd be like, oh my God, where are my keys? Where are my keys? And my brother and my mom and I would search the entire house up and down, like trying to find them. And 10 minutes later, we would come across them sitting like on the kitchen counter, just in the open. So that was kind of weird. It was a crystal ornament of like stained glass, and she would hang it on the front door on the right side where the door itself wouldn't actually open, only the left door would open. It was like a double door situation. There were like large doors. And she hung it on the side that like never opened. It was actually locked, like prevented anyone from opening it. And at one point, a friend was over, my mom and I and her heard it. And we turned the corner, like it was like a few steps away, and we turned the corner and we go look, and there's nothing there. Like nothing moved it. There wasn't a draft. It wasn't by like an air vent or anything. And it was just strange because something seemed to want to get our attention a lot. So I'm kind of chalking up these stories too. I had a ballerina globe that was really heavy, and it had a really thick knob that you have to like really crank. I remember having a tough time doing it when I was younger. That would routinely turn on by itself, and whenever I'd run into my bedroom to go, because it would sit like on my bedside table, like I loved ballet and I wanted to keep it next to my bed, and my Nana had bought it for me, and it would turn on by itself, and whenever I ran in to go see, it would turn off. So it was just the strangest thing. One time my brother and I were playing, and our bedroom doors were adjacent to each other, so like at a 90-degree angle, like my bedroom door was here and his was here. It was like later at night, it was darker outside, and my brother and I closed our doors and we both heard growling. We didn't have pets at the time, and I remember after it happened, we both kept our doors closed for a little bit, and we opened them back up, and I went into my brother's room and I was like, "Did you hear that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I heard that." And like we were both really afraid. Another time, my parents had this 90s box TV. Think of the most classic 90s TV with like the curved screen and like the big thick back of the TV. Like it was literally from like 1991 or something. My parents kept it, and in 2005 or 6 they sent it in to get looked at because the TV kept turning on whenever we entered the room. Like if we came back from dinner or something, it would literally turn on by itself at random. And so we were like confused. My parents were like, "No, maybe it's broken. Like it's a little bit old now. It's been like 10 or 12 years. Like, you know, it's kind of old. Maybe let's get it looked at." So the mechanic, whoever was trying to address the TV, had it for a month, and they took it apart, and I couldn't find any issues with it. I tried for like that whole month to recreate what was happening, and they couldn't understand it. Nothing was wrong with the TV. It was perfectly fine. We had an Elmo doll that would like talk if you squeezed it. And my brother and I didn't play with it that much, especially when we were like, I was like closer to 10 years old. I was too cool for Elmo. But we kept it in the closet with all our toys, and it would just go off at random. And maybe it was malfunctioning. Maybe the battery was bad. Who knows? But my dad would like laugh. He'd be like, "Oh," he was like, there's Elmo trying to talk to you. Elmo wants to see you." And I'm like, "Dad, like, it's not funny. It's scary." One time I walked in my bedroom. I probably was between 10 and 12 years old at this point. I walked into my bedroom and I had one window facing like the neighbor's yard, and I saw a hand go by the window like this. It was like a weird like motion, but the hand was like pale white. It was not like the color of any regular person's hand. And I just started sobbing, and I freaked out, and my dad ran outside immediately, and there was no one nearby. Like he went to go check the perimeter of the house. Like there was no explanation. But I remember being really traumatized and scared to sleep that night. Another time my mom told me that she was kneeling on the floor, like scrubbing something off the floor. She felt like a presence, like someone was standing right behind her. And she was like, you know, like when you're in the room and you can feel someone in the room and like the energy kind of changes and you can feel someone next to you. She was like, that's what it felt like. And I expected to see you or Russell behind me, and none of you were behind me. And she was so creeped out that she told my dad about it. Another time I saw a black hooded figure. I was playing in the like main part of the house. I was playing toys or something, and I remember seeing in my parents' door, this guy must have been 7 foot tall. He was massive. He took the whole door frame. Walk from one side of the door frame to the next, like almost through the room. Like he walked from like the bathroom to the bedroom. It was the master bedroom. Walked from one side of the room to the other, And it freaked me out because I thought, oh my God, like who is in the house? Like he was pitch black. I mean, there was no reflection at all off of whoever this was. And my mom, I thought it was my mom at first because she had such dark hair, but her hair wasn't that long. I think it was like shoulder length, so it didn't make sense. But one time the faucet in the bathroom just was on full blast by itself, and I remember my dad and I and a couple of us ran in there, and like we turned off the faucet and we were like, wow, no one was in here, and somehow the faucet is like on full blast. It was one of those ones that you had to push up. It wasn't just like a twist one that was like could like come undone easily or something, but it was on full blast, and they were new faucets. My parents had redone, most of the house at that point. Another time, my mom would also see shadows like in the corners of her eyes. She'd see like figures, and she would think that it was my brother or I, but it was never us. She would check. Another time there was a picture of me in the hallway. My parents kept photos of like us as kids, and it was my 1-year-old photo, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was my 4-year-old photo. I was very young, but she had framed it and it flew across the hallway and cracked. I didn't see it, but my parents heard it, and my parents told me that they knew that it had flown across the room or across the hallway because it was on one side of the wall and then it was across the way, like cracked against the wall. So that was really creepy. That is the majority of the rest of my experiences that I can remember from that time. Thanks for sticking around and listening. I hope you enjoyed part 2. Hi everyone, this is the 3rd time I've tried to take this video, and hopefully my last time. I am coming on here because my videos went viral for my childhood and the experiences I had growing up. I wanted to let you guys know that I am going on a podcast for the first time ever in my entire life. I'm going to be telling my stories and my experiences to the hauntings. It's going to air on the 23rd. We're recording it. I don't know if it's live, but we're going to record it on the 23rd at 10 p.m. And I don't know how many of you will see this, but hopefully this reaches the right people. I also wanted to just come on here and say that I had the kind of weirdest experience today. I was watching a Netflix show, and there was a scene in this show of people singing at a choir in a church, in like a beautiful church. And I just had this vision. I was like, oh my God, I have to go do that. Like I can see myself there doing that. And I felt this urge. And I don't know if I mentioned this in any of my videos, but I grew up going to church. I grew up going to private school. So unfortunately I was exposed to kind of not the best side of the church, and I don't have the best opinion overall of organized religion. I'm more of a holistic person. I believe, if you can call me holistic, I guess you can call me more well-rounded, like open-minded. I believe that all religions have truth to it, and I believe that all religions are valid, and we all experience the universe differently, and God will speak, if you can call, the universe is what I like to refer to God as, but the universe will speak to people of different ethnicities and races and different groups of people with different backgrounds in different religions. And that's been more of my opinion of it, but I've gotten away from just religion in general, and I am joining a choir. I messaged someone tonight, and I'm really happy to say that I've done that because it's something that I've shied away from for so many years. And I don't know how many of you are religious. I'm not really religious myself, like I said, but I would really like to feel that connection and like wholeness again in my life. And maybe that's just me kind of reverting back to what I always grew up doing, was every day we would go to church and sing. And I really miss that. So those are my 2 updates. I don't really have anything else to talk about, but I'm happy that everyone enjoyed my experiences, and hopefully you guys can join the podcast on Thursday night. Okay, bye.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Alright, so I have a fun one for you. Please keep in mind I've got animals in the background. This is like the quietest place I have. Tiny gremlins and all. Anyways, so this story is actually one of my most validating stories that I have to share, and it's one of my favorites because it was such a vivid experience for me. I had experiences since I was really, really little. So keep in mind that this was not something that was foreign to me, but it was enough to really, really deep seed itself into my memory. So when I was growing up, my dad had partial custody of me. I was at his house every other weekend, and he lived in a trailer across the field from my grandparents. And basically the way that this property is made up. It's like, you know, here's the trailer, you got a field, then my grandparents' house, and then up the hill from my dad's trailer is his driveway, and then there's another little plot up next to the driveway that is just all empty. It looks like, you know, an empty house lot. And I used to, gosh, I hated my room. We had rooms on the opposite sides. So his faced the road, the main road, and mine faced my grandparents. So I was on one end, he was on his end. His end was closest to the front door. Mine didn't really have any exits. So two things about this room. One, it had a set of bay windows I hated. Now, any other given circumstances, I probably would have fallen in love with it. But even when I went to stay with them at age 20, 19, something like that, I hated it. I still hated it. And it was because I always felt like there was something out there. I didn't know what it was, but I always felt like there was something out there. So I would always keep the blinds closed. And so it made my room really, really freaking dark. And my grandparents were like, you probably are hearing the coyote sniffing around, or a raccoon or something. There's wildlife everywhere. They're surrounded by, you know, tons and tons of timber. So one night I had tried to sleep in there, which, you know, I used to try to sleep in there, but I would always end up on the couch for one reason or another. And I jolted out of my sleep. I don't know if I had a nightmare or if it was a dream or what, but I woke up and I let my eyes adjust because I've got blue eyes, and any amount of light from like the kitchen, my dad left the kitchen light on for me, so I could see pretty well. It wasn't like pitch black, but it was dark enough. And I'm just laying there trying to compose myself, and out of the corner of my eye I see some movement, so I turn my head towards my door, and I shit you not, in comes a nurse with a cart. She was dressed in like 50s, 60s style uniform, and she rolls this cart up next to my bed and pulls up a syringe off of the cart and said, "Hold still, this won't hurt very long." I booked it. I was absolutely just terrified. And I remember distinctly my dad going, "Girl, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Why are you up? What happened?" And I'm trying to tell him, he's not understanding me. And he says he has no memory of this whatsoever. So I guess it had that kind of impact on him. But for me, it was a completely different story. I will never forget that. That is the most vivid ghost experience that I've ever had, but it gets better. So later on, I'm like, I don't know, 21, 22, and I'm telling this story amongst my family. My mom's like, you know there used to be a nursing home on that plot of land, right? And I was like, no, they never mentioned that. They said something about a cabin, but I never knew anything about. And she's like, yeah, there used to be a cabin there at one point, but it had a nursing home on it. And what she was talking about was the nursing home on the other side of my dad's driveway, so the one up the hill. There used to be a nursing home facility right there. And, oh man. And I was like, oh, okay, so it has some backing. And later on, like, I would have to say about 2018 was when I asked my aunt about it, because she was in her, I think she was in her teenage years or in her close to adulthood years. But either way, she was there and helping out when this place was still up and going. And she said that this place had a independent living housing section to it, that it had 6 trailers, so that would account for the reason why there were so many trailers on the lot. But my dad's trailer was new. Like, he had just had that put in when I was like, I don't know, 4. And she had told me that the owner of this place, the person who ran it, everything, she actually lived in a trailer right where my dad's sat. Not only that, but she died in the trailer, and she was a nurse when she was younger, which would have been 50s to 60s, which validated me more than I could have ever expressed to her at that moment. And as the conversation goes on, she further tells me that there was a war veteran in the trailer right on the other side of her, closest to my grandma's driveway, that used to have episodes and would patrol the yard. He would end up down at my grandparents' house. He would end up messing around with other tenants, scaring them, you know, the whole 9 yards. And he mainly stayed in the front yard area and along the field where my window was. He had a tendency to look through windows. And I had no idea any of this information was there, any of this happened, because my dad doesn't talk about this kind of stuff. You know, history, you don't get answers unless you ask for them, basically. It wasn't something that he went parading around information-wise. So it gave a ton of validation to my experience. So that's just one of many. I have so much validation from it. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8,
my parents owned the same house before I was born and when I finally sold it after they had died when I was 42 years old. This house, my whole life, horrible, creepy vibes, right? Like, wanted no part of ever being there alone. But when I was about 12 years old, the house burnt down, right? And back in the day, when like your house burnt down, you did insurance stuff, like the homeowner actually had to go in and actually document everything that was lost. I mean, I'm talking down to the fucking toothpick. Like, my mom spent 3 months in our house, like, trying to get every single penny for every single thing that we lost in the house fire. So while she was doing this, my mom, because it was back in the day, had one of those disposable cameras, right? She was taking pictures as she was walking around the house, figuring out like what had been ruined. Just, she wanted them for insurance, whatever. So the house has actually been rebuilt at this point, and we're back living in it. And my mom finally goes back to, I think it was like, dude, I think it was like the fucking Pay and Save or something. That's how long it's been. But you would turn the disposable camera in, and then it would take like a week, and the pictures would come back to you. And I remember my mom got those pictures back, and she was standing in our kitchen, and all of a sudden my mom just dropped all the pictures that were in her hand. And she just stood there silent, like she'd seen a ghost, like something was severely wrong. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, because I'm probably like 14 years old at this time. And she's like, I want you to pick up the pictures and go through all of them and tell me what you see that doesn't seem right. And I remember picking up the pictures and looking through them. And the picture where I finally saw it, it was probably 5 pictures deep. And I remember looking at the picture too, because it was like clearly evident in the picture. So we had a family room that was like offset from the kitchen. It was down 3 steps. And she must have been down there taking pictures, because that's where the worst of the fire damage was at, because that's where it started at. And in this picture, on those 3 steps, were 3 tiny people. Like, I'm going to say like porcelain doll people. That's what they reminded me of. Sitting, staring back at the camera. And like, it was evident. There was no argument of that was what was there in that picture. Years went by and we would show these pictures to people, and everyone who always saw them were horrified. I kid you not, like probably 10 years before my mom passed away, those pictures went missing and they've never been found again. But I will say this. I was 14 when I saw that picture, and that house continued to creep me out for the rest of my life. I went on, had kids. Like I said, my parents never sold that house until I sold that house. But there was a night I was sleeping. Okay, so like I was always uncomfortable with my kids sleeping anywhere in the house other than the room that I was in when we would go and visit. And there was a night that me and my daughter and my son, for some reason, we were sleeping in the front room. I don't know if we'd watched a movie and that's all we all fell asleep on the floor out there or whatever. But my son was on the couch, and me and my daughter were both laying on the floor, and she was in between the couch and me. I heard it, but it also woke her up. And I kid you not, that night in that house, something said her name. And she was only like, I'd say 6 or 7 years old at that time. She remembers it to this day, and she's 22 years old now. So, yeah, like, I don't know if that's a ghost story or just fucking a Workman story? I don't know, but yeah, horrifying. So for everyone that liked my video about the little people that my mom saw, you know, got the picture of in our house after it burned down, I want you to go onto my profile and search way back. That'll give us a chance to get to know each other, to a video that I made on Halloween Eve of last year about the same house. Made the video 10 months ago. It was about a night that I woke up and saw something in my bedroom. Like, horrible house to live in, you know, grow up in. But yeah, like, this house has been tormenting me my whole life. But if you want to, go find the video, and then maybe you'll want some more.